Darkness enveloped the damp cave, and the sound of terrifying screams echoed through the walls. The goblins were celebrating the death of their leader. One goblin with bloodshot red eyes went mad and declared himself the new leader. However, his comrade disagreed, believing that he had done the most work and should be the leader instead. Filled with envy and rage, he charged at his comrade, biting into the other's nose. The cave was now filled with chaos. Screams rang out more violently. Other goblins gathered around, watching the battle with amusement and betting on who would win. It was their favorite pastime. Chaos brought endless joy to these simple souls. However, amidst the excitement, they discussed bringing the prey out to satisfy their desires because the old leader had hidden a human girl and had not touched her yet. They started whispering to each other, plotting to find and take her for themselves. Some goblins hesitated because the prey was protected by a different goblin. He was unlike the other goblins, while other goblins wore simple clothes to cover their private parts. He had covered himself with tattered clothes that covered almost his entire body, and his appearance was terrifying not only because of his clothes, but also because of the aura he exuded like a human being. And when the leader died, they believed that this different one would keep the prey for himself. They stared at the strange goblin. They would follow him and snatch the girl when they had the chance. Some smarter goblins, they suggested waiting a little longer because their strongest members had gone ahead to find the prey. They were planning to let the strange goblin fight. Those guys, then take advantage of the chaos to kill him and finally take the prey for themselves. However, they didn't expect the strange goblin to be able to hear their conversation. Knowing that the girl was in danger, the strange goblin decided to run back to where she was being held captive. With his speed, he easily lost the other goblins. When he arrived at the location, he was horrified to find the rebellious goblins ready to violate the girl. The girl begged for help, her eyes wide with fear. He spoke to them, telling them to release the girl. The leading goblin and refused this request. The leader was dead. He felt like he was the strongest goblin in the group and this prey was his. The strange goblin didn't care about that. He was determined to protect this girl. Seeing this, the big goblin and his henchmen decided to attack and kill the strange goblin. Outnumbered, the strange goblin was quickly subdued, but he didn't give up. He didn't believe that these low-level goblins could defeat him, and more importantly, he didn't want to die here. Seizing the opportunity, he used his weapon to kill the biggest goblin, causing the others to fear. Never before had a goblin used a sharp weapon and attack like a human being. The strange goblin pointed his weapon at the rest. His words were emotionless. Leave or die. These words and the image of the giant being killed quickly frightened them. The remaining goblins fled, not forgetting to shout threats. They would return with reinforcements to take him down. When the other goblins left, but the strange goblin still wasn't letting his guard down. Trying to regain his composure, he knew that this was just the beginning of the hellish days to come when he decided to fight against his own kind. This girl's name was Kelly. She supported him and thanked him for saving her once again. She could tell that he was different from the other goblins. He had never harmed her. She hoped he wouldn't die. It is true that a goblin would never protect a human, but there was a deeper reason for the strange goblin's actions. You guessed it right. He was a human. A few days ago, Lampin died in a terrible accident. He didn't expect that. Instead of meeting God after being hit by a truck, he was transferred to another world with a system. However, his system wasn't fully activated yet. Besides being able to see some stats, it didn't seem to have any other functions and it seemed quite useless. But since meeting Kelly, she told him about the role of those stats in this world. This world was ruled by gods with many powerful monsters, and humans had demonstrated their role on this continent through absolute power. Unfortunately, the goblin he was reborn as was the weakest and dirtiest monster in this world, and his stats were extremely low, so he would be easily killed by his own kind. Currently he was level 5, HP 20, Strength 5, Defense 5, and these stats gave him an overall strength of 30. Luckily his name didn't change. He was still Lamveen. However, there was still a way for him to become stronger here, and that was through mating with girls in this harsh reality. Goblins were capable of becoming stronger through constant mating and procreation. However, they do not have a female gender, so they could only mate with other female creatures. That's why goblins constantly plundered and kidnapped women. Lam Tien, a former human, found doing so completely against his morals, but to survive he had to be stronger. This issue always worried him. Seeing Lam Tien's worry, the girl told him not to think too much. After spending days with him, she knew that he was completely different from the other goblins and really didn't want to live with them. With a hopeful smile, she promised that when the knights came to rescue her, she would tell them about how he saved her because the knights were always fair and just. They would surely agree to let him live in her village. Her optimism gave Lam Thin hope. He believed what she said. He was full of hope, even if the system couldn't activate immediately. As long as he persevered until the humans came to rescue them and gained the protection of humans, he could survive. Then he could slowly figure out a way to fully activate the system. However, things weren't as easy as Lam Tien had hoped. A scream, a sign of the goblins returning to them without hesitation. He ordered Celia to hide and she obeyed. Immediately, the first goblin appeared. It charged wildly at Lam Tien, screaming that humans had appeared and that it wanted to mate with the girl to become stronger because it knew that once it became stronger, it wouldn't be killed. The goblin ran frantically looking for Celia. However, its haste made it an easy target for Lam Tien, who quickly killed the unfortunate goblin. Lam Tien quickly informed Celia that humans were here to save her. Kelly's face lit up with joy. She assumed it was a knight. She said she would go out to check. Thiene looked at her with concern. The appearance of a knight meant Celia would be saved, and perhaps an opportunity for him to prove his worth. But his excitement was stifled when he saw a knight easily killing the other goblins with his strength. The knight wasn't putting in much effort to deal with the goblins. This human seemed to be venting his anger, clearly complaining that these filthy creatures had ripped his clothes. Seeing the human stats lamp, Thiene was incredibly surprised. His name was Loader, level 25 with strength 30 and defense 50. Equipped with platinum armor and an iron sword with a total power of 400. This was the highest stat Lamp Thiene had seen since coming to this world, making him question if Loader was actually human. While Lamp Thiene stood in place, amazed at how easily the human dealt with the goblins, Kelly excitedly approached, addressing Loader. Delighted to see him, however, Lam Tien quickly noticed that Loader was raising his sword to attack Celia. With quick reflexes, he pushed her away from the attack just in time. Despite saving Celia from death, the sudden attack baffled Lam Tien. The Holy Knights were supposed to be here to save people. Why were they attacking Celia? He assumed that because the cave was quite dark, he had mistaken the girl for a goblin. But that didn't seem to be the case, as Loader angrily expressed his disdain for a goblin. Having dodged his attack, Celia quickly tried to explain she was a human, but Loader told her to be silent because he knew who she was. However, he believed she had been defiled by the goblins and might even be pregnant with their child. It was laughable to him that someone as filthy as her would expect mercy from him. It would be better for her if she repented her sins and paid for them with death. Celia begged him, insisting that even though she was captured, she hadn't been defiled by the goblins. Then she pointed to Lam Tien, explaining that he was the one who had protected her. But unfortunately, Loader didn't believe a word she said. The idea that a goblin had saved her and wasn't a human enemy was beyond the bounds of a believable story. He raised his sword to end her. Lam Tien couldn't believe what he was seeing. He didn't expect things to end so quickly. With no other choice, Lampkin stepped forward without hesitation, pushing Kelly aside and facing Loader. He hoped there would be enough time for Kelly to escape. Lampkin grabbed his crude weapon and lunged at Loader. This was an outcome he hadn't expected, but even if he had to sacrifice himself, he wanted to protect the girl. This could be the act that would prove he was once human. But before the collision, an aura enveloped Lampkin, leaving both him and Loader astonished. This magic came from a woman dressed in white. Her aura exuded holiness and solemnity. She demanded Loader stop because she felt this goblin was strange. This woman was none other than the Saint Ephra. Seizing the opportunity, Kelly crawled over and begged her to save them. Ephra helped Celia to her feet and presented her to Loader, who had tried to kill her just minutes ago. Then Ephra turned her attention to Lamine and asked if he could understand what she was saying. Lamine was trapped within the barrier according to what Celia had told him. Ephra was the saint and the spokesperson for the divine temple. She could be his only hope of leaving this place alive. Lamartine quickly responded that he could understand. He took a deep breath and kept saying he wasn't a monster of this world, and he used to be human, but he became this way due to an accident. He could explain everything if she took him along. While Loader thought this goblin was just a bit smarter than the others, Ephra smiled. Goblins are usually stupid and lowly creatures. They can't think or speak fluently, but this goblin can speak, and this might be a blessing from the Holy Mother. The holy woman Ephra turned to Celia and asked her to confirm if this goblin really didn't hurt her. Celia happily confirmed that Lamine not only didn't hurt her, but he protected her from other goblins and gave her food. This pleased Ephra. She realized the strangeness of the goblin. She decided to take it back to the temple and study it thoroughly before making any decision. Hearing this, Kelia was very happy because she fulfilled her promise to the goblin. Ifrit then turned to Lamp and asked if he was willing to go with them. Hearing this, Lamp Tien was very happy. He immediately replied that he was willing. Finally, everything seemed to be getting better for Lamp Tien because he was with someone who could listen and understand reason. With a snap of her fingers, Ifrit quickly broke the barrier that imprisoned Lamp. Then she ordered everyone to prepare to leave. Lamp Tien felt a sense of safety about his future, which he was incredibly grateful for. So he immediately approached Effort to express his gratitude, promising that he would repay her. But as he looked closer at her face, he noticed a cruel smile that took him by surprise. The next thing he heard was a sound he was all too familiar with, the sound of metal piercing flesh. He knew what was happening, but he turned back in fear. The fear was immediately confirmed. Celia was killed. The lifeless body lay motionless on the cold ground. Lamartine was stunned, unable to move. The shock was too great, just as he thought things were getting better. Turned out to be a cruel lie. At this moment, the voice of the woman he thought was the savior rang out, along with the cruel laughter. She mocked his naivety and said that his willingly following her was the best way to repay her, and Lamartine understood the cruel reality of this world. A week has passed in the village. The bell tolls, summoning everyone to the town square. As they gather, Loader addresses the assembled villagers, announcing the devastating goblin attack on Bright Town. This incites fury among the villagers. They demand blood for blood, seeing humans and goblins as sworn enemies. Exactly the reaction Loader had hoped for. After whipping up their hatred, Loader begins to praise the temple. The knights, he explains acting on the temple's behalf, have slain these goblins and avenged the villagers. Then the holy maiden Fia steps forward with her powers. She creates a dazzling spectacle, urging the villagers to continue praying to the temple. She assures them that the temple will always protect its faithful. Her words instantly sway the villagers, even those previously skeptical. Their faith is reignited and they turn to the temple with devotion and trust. Later, Fia returns to her chambers, basking in the success of her speech. It's nothing new. These villagers are the most gullible fools imaginable. They'll pray even harder, worship the temple more fervently, and bring her more offerings. Her smug satisfaction is abruptly interrupted by a consciousness, and it's clear he's been through hell. Horrifying scars cover his body and one eye has been gouged out. Despite his injuries, a burning rage burns in his eye. Fia ignores his words. A twisted smile plays on her lips. She's amazed by his tenacious spirit. It's been a long time since she'd seen such tenacious life. Perhaps this is why the temple hasn't been able to eradicate all goblins from the continent. Lamartine's return to consciousness excites Ifra. She can continue her experiments, observing how the poison affects him. Lamartine, enraged, repeats his accusations. You tricked me. You killed Celia. Is this the true face of your temple? This so-called justice humans boast about? His fury is met with Zephyr's cruel indifference. She silences him with a sharp thrust of a staff against his mouth. She laughs, mocking his anger. How dare a weak, filthy creature like you, a degenerate goblin, speak of human justice? She claims Celia was under a spell and dared to speak for him. A betrayal, therefore death was her final act of loyalty. Goblins are nothing more than insects on this continent, she continues. It's a great honor that the Holy Maiden even speaks to you. Be grateful and use your wretched little body to serve mankind and the temple's experiments. The brutal torture continues, helpless to resist the endless, unbearable pain. Even when he falls unconscious, he's quickly awakened by the torment. In his torture, he wonders if he'll die here. He doesn't want to, but he can't blame anyone but himself. He was so foolish. Reborn as a lowly goblin, he had naively believed in humans, in the kindness of those not of his kind. His weakness and naivety led to Kelly's death after he was captured by the villagers. Loader and Ifrit tortured and tormented him with every imaginable cruelty. They never believed his words, taking sick pleasure in his suffering. Lamartine's suffering eventually comes to an end. He's tortured to death by the cruel woman. His only wish in his final moments, if he had another chance, was to never trust humans again. If he could do it again, he'd crush their bones and drink their blood. But that was only if he could be reborn. As his consciousness fades, instead of drifting into an endless void, Lamartine awakens in a different space, a place filled with brilliant white light and twinkling stars. His body is fully healed before he can ask where he is. A system window appears. It informs him that the Goblin life simulation system has been activated and he has died. A brief summary of his life flashes before him. Due to your naivety, you forgot you were a goblin. Humans will never trust goblins. You died from torture and abuse. This pain will be engraved in your mind and you will never forget. As a result, you are the most tragic character in the rebirth system. Do you want to start again? Yes or no? Lampin is startled. His system only activated when he died, and this system might allow him to be reborn. But will he be reborn as a low-level goblin this time? The system reminds him, if you choose no, your soul will completely dissipate. If you choose yes, you will be reborn into a goblin body 1 week earlier. This made him incredibly excited. A week ago, this was his chance for revenge. He had to get revenge on Loader and Ephra. Of course, he chose to be reborn again. A white light enveloped his body, signaling the start of his Goblin 2.0 life. Lamartine's eyes were now filled with rage. This rebirth was slightly different because this was his Goblin 2.0 life to help him live longer. The system decided to give him a little more power. Feeling his strength, Lamartine smiled with satisfaction. Even if it was just a little, coming back to life was the most important thing. But it seemed this was his only chance, because the system immediately warned him of danger. People from the temple were coming, and if he died again, he wouldn't be reborn. This shocked him, but he didn't expect more. Being reborn once was already a miracle. He wasn't strong enough to fight the temple yet, so he immediately asked the system what he could do. The system explained that it was called the Goblin Life Simulation System. It could simulate his life and predict future events. Each different choice would lead to different outcomes. Each simulation required 24 hours to complete. After the simulation, he would earn points from each simulation, which he could use to exchange for items in the system. This made Lamartine chuckle. This simulation method meant he could see the future, so he immediately started using the simulation. The system reminder displayed the current situation. Escape the Goblin Cave. To escape, he had to make choices. 1. Warn his goblin friends and unite to face the humans. The reward would be 10 points. 2. Abandon the other goblins and escape on his own. The reward would be 5 points. 3. Hide in the cave and pray the temple. People don't find him. The reward would be 0 points. Lamartine thought about it. Even though there were 3 options, he was sure that even if all the goblins in the cave united, they couldn't defeat Loader. The battle would end with their deaths, and he wouldn't be able to escape. But he still chose to simulate the first option. He hoped that, with the points he earned, he could exchange for a weapon from the shop. Then he could kill a Loader with a sneak attack. As predicted, after the simulation, all the goblins were killed. The result was a complete failure. The system asked him to think carefully when making decisions and also gave him 10 points. Lamartine was happy that he got the points even though his plan failed. He quickly opened the system's shop. Many weapons appeared immediately and he could exchange for them, but the problem was that his points were too low. The only thing he could exchange for was a short knife. It could increase his movement speed by 10% and his strength by 15 points. He grabbed the knife, though stats were immediately added to his information panel. At this point, Lamartine remembered Celia. He asked why he didn't see her. The system informed him that due to his rebirth, some events in this world had changed. Celia wasn't captured by the goblins. She was living happily with her family in the village. Knowing this made Lamartine very happy. A smile appeared on his face. He felt he had fulfilled his promise to bring her home. Now he had no worries on his path to revenge. The thing to do now was to escape and survive. He chose a narrow exit to go out. This place was small, so there would definitely be fewer guards. There were only 2 guards outside. They were discussing their work. These goblins were very weak and thin. Heard their conversation. He carefully advanced to the entrance of the cave. The 2 guards talked to each other. Since this passage was small, any goblin that ran out would be easy to kill. Loader had asked them to kill any girl who ran out and not let them return to the village. This conversation confirmed Lamson's belief that everyone in the temple was a bunch of bastards who were willing to kill their own people. Therefore, a goblin like him had no reason to be merciful to them. Lamson pinched his nose, trying his best to imitate a woman's voice of distress, and pleaded for help. The guards immediately paid attention to it. They wanted to kill the girl and receive a reward from Loader. One of them entered the cave with a knife behind his back. He told the girl not to be afraid. He was a temple man and he was here to take everyone home. But instead of a woman, it was Lam Thin, with a sharp knife pointed at the knight at the exit. The knight noticed the strange behavior of his comrade and decided to check on him. As he approached, he was shocked to see a goblin standing there in a flash lamp themed through the knight's body away, then charged toward the terrified knight at incredible speed, to doing what he did. The knight offered Lamartine a bag of gold and a beautiful woman, promising to select the most alluring one for him. However, for a man like Lam Veen who had been betrayed, these words only fueled his anger. The knight's true nature was exposed. He had planned to use Lam Tien's hesitation to kill him, but it was all part of Lam Tien's plan. He swiftly and coldly ended the knight's life. Lam Tien felt pity for the man's family, but he understood that sometimes ruthlessness was necessary. Evil needed to be eradicated, especially now that he was no longer human. His attention was drawn to a voice coming from the forest. It was louder and his men heading towards them. Lam Tien quickly took off the knight's clothes and left in a hurry, promising to find Loader and Eifer soon. Later, Loader and Ephra arrived at the scene. They were stunned to find the bodies of the 2 temple knights. After examining the bodies, Loader suspected the goblin ambush. The clean, swift cuts were unusual. Ephra thought it was impossible for a regular goblin to kill both knights. She believed a goblin capable of such a feat must be a mutated one. Loader agreed with her assessment. He was furious that the knights could not handle a mutated goblin, and allowing it to escape was a bad sign. Loader, furious, kicked one of the corpses. Enraged that these knights couldn't handle a mutated goblin for her lips, Licking couldn't control her excitement and cruelty at the thought of obtaining such a unique specimen for experimentation. Night fell and the moonlight cast an eerie glow on the forest. Lantern panted heavily, happy to be alive. He had run until exhaustion, but he couldn't afford to let his guard down. He tried to recover as quickly as possible to continue his journey. He realized that they hated goblins so much, so he would use the goblin way to deal with them. Goblins could upgrade their attributes for mating and cannibalism, both increasing strength and creating stronger generations. Lamartine's mind was consumed with hatred in this life. He wanted all men to experience only the happiness of death, and all women to kneel and weep at his feet, especially Loader and Ephra. But his thoughts were interrupted by the rustling of leaves. He grew worried, thinking it was one of Loader's henchmen still pursuing him. He decided to strike first to gain an advantage. Without hesitation, Lambkin stood up and charged at his opponent. The unexpected appearance of Lamb Thin shocked and frightened the stranger, who stumbled backward. Lamb was shocked to find that this was a goblin. The sound it made him think that it could speak. Inertia made Lamb Thin also fall forward after recovering his posture. Lambkin was surprised to find that this goblin had characteristics of a female. Why was a female goblin appearing at this time? According to everyone's knowledge, goblins were only male reproduced by mating with other creatures. Her presence had changed Lam Tien's entire perception. In confusion, his eyes were fixed on the female goblin. She thought he was about to do something. She quickly sat up and begged him not to hurt her, explaining that she was just fetching water. This only made Lamb Thin more worried. How could this goblin speak complete sentences like him to find the answer? He used his assessment skill to check her attributes. She was level 3, but her profession was God's messenger. She had the titles of Fallen God, Pure Soul with attributes Blood 10, Energy 2, Defense 1 with the skills of Devour and Wild Growth. Her overall strength was 10, and Lanvin was surprised to see the special note. When a male goblin combines with a female goblin, they will become the legendary goblin god. This made Lam Tien have an unclean thought, because if he mated with her, he would have immense power. As if seeing the dark thoughts in Lam Tien's eyes, the girl backed away in fear. She said she was caught by the patriarch to fetch water. If she didn't bring the water back, she would be beaten to death by the patriarch. Seeing the girl scared, Lam Tien spoke up and apologized. He said he didn't mean to scare her. He also patted her shoulder to comfort her, saying that if she cried, it would attract the attention of bad people. But the girl didn't care for Lam Tien's actions. She was concerned about why Lam Thin could also speak in a complete way like her. Her eyes lit up with excitement. Lamartine laughed and nodded because of her cuteness. This was reasonable because ordinary goblins couldn't speak, and maybe she rarely talked to other people in the tribe. However, Lamartine's line of thought was once again interrupted. He noticed the girl was clinging to his cloak. She said Lamartine was good because the other goblins just beat her up. This was the first time a goblin treated her like this. The girl suggested that Lamartine return to her tribe with her. This surprised Lamartine. He didn't expect there to be a goblin tribe nearby. He still didn't know if the Loader people were chasing them. It wasn't suitable to ABC right now, and he needed to find a safe place to hide. Lamartine's eyes lit up. This was a good opportunity for him to recruit his first followers. Right after that, he suggested that the girl take him to her tribe. The girl agreed without blushing. It seems because this was the first time she met a goblin as handsome as this. She immediately agreed to take him to her camp. Soon after they arrived at the goblin camp, Lampion's appearance made the other goblins extremely wary because he was a stranger and dressed like a human, something goblins had never seen before. Lampin calmly observed with the number of goblins here. He felt very satisfied and decided to start building his kingdom from here. With a calm attitude, he explained to the goblins that he wanted to join them and he wanted to meet their leader, but this proposal was immediately rejected. They decided that a freak like Lamartine couldn't meet the patriarch. They decided to capture Lamvine and then bring him to see the patriarch. At this time, the girl worriedly stepped forward to block the goblins. She said that Lam Tien was a good person. The commotion had attracted the patriarch's attention. He inquired about the situation. His appearance surprised Lamartine a little. The patriarch's name was an old goblin with a staff decorated with many skulls. He looked very ferocious. His appearance was completely different from the goblins had seen before. Besides his clothes, he also had very high stats with level 25. Priest profession. Blood 102. Mana 29. Defense 17 with the skills of Devour. Summon. Thorn. Control equipment is skull, staff and bone chains, and has an overall strength of 200. Lambton's eyes lit up with vigilance. He didn't expect there to be such a strong goblin in this tribe. The goblin leader, after appearing, slowly walked towards Lam Thin. He looked at the female goblin, asking if she had brought the stranger back to the camp. The girl, filled with worry, confirmed that she had brought Lam Tien to the camp, explaining that he had nowhere else to go with his terrifying red eyes. The leader praised the girl for doing a good job, but then, to her surprise, he ordered other goblins to grab Lam. Thin, exhausted, stating that she couldn't walk anymore. She had been walking all day and was utterly drained. She didn't receive any help from her own kind. Instead, they beat her, calling her ugly and threatening to kill her if she didn't find the iron ore. She kept pleading, but the abuse didn't stop. They wanted to kill her right then and there for being lazy. Unable to bear the sight, Lamartine picked up a rock and threw it at the head of one of the goblins. This action caused them to look at him with angry eyes. Lamartine explained that he wanted them to follow and help find the iron ore, not to fight. He said he would tell them what iron ore looks like, and that if they wanted to live in return, they should go to the valley ahead and bring back some iron ore. If they didn't listen, he would kill them right then and there. Lamartine took out his knife and glared at the three goblins with a terrifying expression. This threat terrified them as they imagined him killing them with the iron weapon. They rushed off to find iron ore, not forgetting to threaten Lamartine with death if he failed to create weapons. Lamartine thought to himself that sooner or later they would kill him after obtaining iron tools. The task at hand was to become stronger. Looking at Gobo's information, the notification about mating with her to become a goblin, God caught his eye. Lampin decided it was time to do the things adults do. Seeing Gobu crying, Lampin told her to stop. He sat down beside Gobu and asked her if she wanted to follow him. He promised to protect her, feed her, give her a warm home and ensure no one would bully her. The girl was confused at these words, asking if he was telling the truth. Looking at the girl sincerely, Lampin affirmed that everything he said was true. However, he was currently too weak to prevent further bullying. He needed to become stronger and Gobu was the only one who could help him. The girl, confused, asked what she could do to help him become stronger. Anthene felt a little embarrassed, but he said that if they mated he would become stronger. This made the girl's face turn red. The girl looked at Lampin with suspicion, asking if he was telling the truth. She said she had never tried this before. Lampin was also a little flustered about bringing up this topic. He reassured her that everything would be fine and that he would help her if she wanted it. Without waiting for her response, Lam Tame gently kissed her soft lips and then laid her down on the ground. The girl, embarrassed, agreed, saying she would bear his children. Then, shy sounds echoed through the air. At the same time, notifications appeared one after another, informing him that mating had raised his current level to level 7, and the sound of upgrading echoed. The increase in level also increased his attributes. After a while, Lamthene's body began to change, his muscles becoming more defined. He was now level 7, with 40 HP, 10 strength, 6 defense, and a total strength of 65. Lamthene was surprised at the change in his body. He thought that if he continued like this, he could defeat the goblin leader. Lam Tien warmly stroked Gobu's head. He told her that she was his wife now and he would protect her forever. The girl blushed and, exhausted, thanked Lam Tien, calling him a good person. At this moment, a cry for help caught their attention. Looking in that direction, they saw a goblin running towards them in fear, followed by a large wolf. What caught Lam Tien's attention was the iron ore in the goblin's hand. He didn't expect to find iron ore here, but before he could get it, he had to deal with this problem first. Lam Tien immediately grabbed his knife. He asked Gobu to wait there for him. Gobu looked at Lam Tien with trust, reminding him to be careful. For Lam Tien, this wolf was a test of his strength. The wolf was about to catch the unfortunate goblin, who was desperately trying to escape. But Lam Tien suddenly appeared, wielding his sharp iron knife, charging directly at the large wolf. The fleeing goblin was completely taken aback by this action. Then, it was filled with fear when it saw Lam Tien kill the wolf with one blow. In the goblin's eyes, Lamthene had become a terrifying figure. It immediately handed it over, overwhelmed with fear. Holding the iron ore in his hand, Lamthene laughed with delight at the high quality of the ore. Now, they needed more of this, and after they returned, he would make weapons for the goblins and the tribe. 2 days passed, and with the help of other goblins, Lamthene was able to successfully create a spear with an iron blade. Although it wasn't pretty, it was a major accomplishment for Lamthene and the goblins. The goblins couldn't believe Lamthene could actually create a weapon out of iron, but they wondered if it would actually work. To prove the effectiveness of the new weapon, Lamthene easily plunged the spearhead into the tough skull of the number 1 crocodile wolf. As expected, the spearhead easily pierced through. This demonstration astonished the other goblins. The goblin Lamdeen had saved before was incredibly excited, pointing at the crocodile wolf's corpse. He said he had seen Lamdeen kill the wolf in just a few seconds using the iron weapon, and that he really could make weapons. The other goblins agreed that the iron spear was much more powerful than the stone spears. While the goblins were discussing, Lamdeen held the spear high and asked them if they wanted weapons like this. Without hesitation, the other goblins shouted excitedly that they wanted one, and they hailed him as a god. Only one of the goblins present was not happy. The goblin leader was angry that a newcomer had stolen his respect. The leader grabbed attention by slamming the skull-headed staff in his hand onto the ground with menacing red eyes. He admitted that Lamtheen wasn't lying. Creating a weapon out of iron was a miracle, but it wasn't enough for Lamtheen to stay in the tribe. While Lamtheen and the other goblins listened, the leader demanded that Lamtheen create 50 iron spears within 2 days. After making his demand, the leader immediately left. The other goblins didn't agree with this condition, but they didn't dare object. They felt the leader was too cruel, and they decided to help Lamtheen complete the task. Lamtheen wasn't surprised by the condition. He laughed confidently. He felt it was very advantageous that he had now earned the respect of the other goblins. Livery, Lamtien had completed 50 iron spears. The goblins in the tribe were also very happy that Lamtien could stay in the tribe. With the same menacing look and cunning smile, the leader said he was very satisfied that Lamtien had completed the task and could now stay. To celebrate Lamtien joining the tribe, the leader decided to hold a feast and demanded that everyone participate. The goblins immediately started dancing and celebrating. The feast quickly took place around the bonfire. Gobu cut out a piece of pork and brought it to Lamtheen. This was the best part, so she wanted him to eat it. Lamtheen happily accepted, but after eating for a while, a sharp pain hit him. Lamtheen fell to the ground in agony, and Gobu was terrified. It was clear that Lamtheen had been poisoned. The poisoner was none other than the leader. He walked up to Lamtien with an evil smile. He told Lamtien he was too stupid. The leader said he knew Lamtien's true intentions, and those who dared challenge his authority had only one place to go: hell. Before Lamtien could speak, the leader grabbed Gobu's hair and pulled her towards him. The leader said he saw that Lamtien cared about her very much. So now he would let Lamtien experience the pain of watching her die in front of him. A red line of blood appeared on Gobu's neck as the leader's claws stabbed into her. The leader wanted to crush Lamtien's arrogance and make him suffer. In Gobu's terrified eyes, a red stream of blood spurted out. But it wasn't Gobu's blood. It was the leader's, as his arm was cut off. Lamtien had done it. The leader fearfully asked why he could move after being poisoned. Lamthine smiled. He said the leader was an idiot. When facing a villain like him, he was always vigilant and he was just pretending, but actually Lamthine knew he was going to be poisoned because the system had warned him. The leader was now incredibly angry. He had no choice but to fight. He had lost an arm, so his fighting power had decreased. He used the bone chain in his hand to attack Lamthine. Lamthine also quickly attacked. With his speed, Lamthine easily dodged the attack. Lamthine jumped and his iron knife aimed at the leader's head. The leader was killed. The goblins saw that their leader was dead and were terrified. Lamthine looked at them and declared that he would be their new leader. He would lead them to become a powerful goblin tribe, and they would always have meat to eat. Lamthine hugged Gobu and raised his knife high. He declared his supremacy over the tribe. With Lamthine's strength, the other goblins readily agreed to him being their leader. After all, they were simple-minded creatures who only cared about meat and mating. And the reward Lamthine gave for their loyalty was the leader's corpse. Given permission, they immediately revealed their vicious nature. They devoured the corpse in a cruel and savage way, making Lamthine feel disgusted, but this was the reality of life. What mattered to him now was building his tribe, nurturing the next generation of goblins to make the tribe stronger. This was just the first step on his revenge. Amidst the chaos, no one noticed one pair of eyes watching everything from afar. It was a golden-haired elf girl. As she witnessed the scene, she wondered what was happening. Under the hazy moonlight of the strange world, amidst the ominous shadows of the trees, strange-looking houses appeared. A figure moved with incredible speed, taking just a few leaps to enter a brightly lit house. But what was truly striking was the horrifying scene below. Countless withered, blue goblin corpses hung from large bones. If Lin Tian had witnessed this, he would have been terrified. The elf girl stopped in front of a house. This was the one who had secretly watched Lin Tian's tribe. The princess of this elf tribe, Kasana. A guard elf saw her and was overjoyed to see her return. Ignoring the guard, Kasana immediately went inside. The guard was worried, wanting her to stop, as if there was something inside. Before she could turn away, the queen's voice rang out. She demanded Kasana stop and asked what urgent matter brought her there so hastily. Kasana's eyes turned serious, and she once again mentioned the goblin tribe in the forest. The queen didn't seem interested. She considered goblins low-level, weak, and filthy creatures. Kasana quickly explained, "I found the remains of a bear in the demon forest, completely chewed up. There are signs of a struggle. Many goblin footprints on the ground. The bear was likely killed by goblins from the demon forest." That giant bear is practically the strongest creature in the forest. Those goblins shouldn't be able to kill it. Her voice grew anxious. A few days ago, I saw the goblin leader killed by a young goblin. I'm worried the bear's death is connected to that goblin. The queen was slightly surprised to hear about the new leader, but didn't seem overly concerned. What interested her was the growing number of goblins. The queen snapped her fingers, asking the man to continue serving her. She ordered Kasana to lead a group to eliminate the goblins, but told her not to kill them all, leave a few alive. This wasn't out of kindness. The queen wanted to harvest the hearts of living goblins to brew a tonic for the elf men in her tribe. Of course, Kasana knew the effects of this potion. Hearing this, she face flushed again. Due to Kasana's diligence, the queen offered her a man for the night. She even asked if Kasana had any special requests. Kasana was startled. This reward embarrassed her. She said she had to check on some things tonight and quickly bid farewell to her mother. Back at Lin Tian's camp, the goblins were in a discussion. On the ground was a map of the elf tribe, painstakingly investigated by Lin Tian's subordinates. The tribe consisted of 30 houses, all situated high up. Lin Tian praised his subordinate, promising him 2 elf girls as a reward after defeating the tribe. He told everyone to prepare iron weapons. Hearing about the reward of 2 elf girls, the goblin was excited and eager, immediately going to tell everyone to prepare their weapons. Lin Tian's expression wasn't joyful at the prospect of attacking another tribe. This was a world where strength determined survival. If he didn't build his tribe into a force, sooner or later, they would be destroyed. Lin Tian carefully analyzed the situation. There were 30 houses in the village. If each house 2 elves, there would be a total of 60 elves. Adding the 10 elves guarding the mine, the tribe would have at least 70 people. Looking back, since their leader's death, Lin Tian had led the goblins in crafting weapons and hunting monsters, leveling up their abilities. The goblins, under Lin Tian's command, swept through the forest like a tidal wave, slaughtering countless monsters. These monsters, of course, were eaten. By devouring them, all goblins received new skills such as tusk attacks, skills that hardened their skin like stone, adding 15 points to their defense. Other skills included silent movement and venom production. Not all goblins gained skills from eating monsters, but the tribe's overall strength had improved. Some standout goblins had reached level 18 with high stats. Combined with simple iron spears and armor, they had a total strength of 250. The average strength of goblins in the tribe was now 200, but the elf tribe's collective strength was still significantly higher. This made Lin Tian a little worried. This was a dangerous battle, and Lin Tian wanted to prepare thoroughly. He decided to use the simulation system to find an effective attack method. He discovered unusual signs. Meanwhile, the elves were rushing back to their tribe. Leading the way was Kasana. She couldn't believe that the goblin tribe would attack hers. Initially, she brought a group to eliminate them, but arriving at the camp, she discovered the goblins had changed drastically, especially after hearing about Lin Tian's plans. She wanted to return and report to her mother, but it seemed too late. She was discovered, and arrows flew towards the elves. Now, Kasana lay injured on the ground, terrified. Around her were the bodies of other elves. In the distance, Lin Tian and the other goblins were approaching with sinister smiles. They were delighted to find a live elf. Kasana tried to flee, but she couldn't get up. The wound felt strange, as if the arrow had been poisoned. Lin Tian spoke, surprised at how easily he'd captured Kasana. He said she had arrived at the perfect time. Lin Tian coldly ordered his subordinates to capture all the elves. Kasana was awakened by an unknown liquid, her soaked form revealing stunningly beautiful lines, her dazed eyes evoking thoughts of wicked deeds. The goblins stared at her with lustful gazes, their desire for her undeniable, waiting for the opportune moment. Lamphine grabbed Kasana, acknowledging the undeniable allure of the elf's body, sending the goblins into a frenzy. Capturing her would grant them a chance to defeat the elf queen. Gazed upon as prey, Kasana trembled. She attempted to intimidate Lamphine, calling him a coward. She declared herself the princess of the elves, questioning why he dared kidnap her and threaten her people. She claimed her mother's kindness had allowed Lamphine and his goblins to survive, for they would have been eradicated long ago. She warned him that if he dared touch her, the goblin queen would annihilate all goblins here. Lamphine only sneered at her threats. He flung Kasana to the ground, mocking her claims about the elf queen's kindness. The surrounding goblins echoed his laughter. He pointed to a goblin, stating that what he had heard from his subordinate contradicted Kasana's narrative. He said his subordinates might be foolish, but they never lied. In Kasana's terrified gaze, Lamphine revealed he knew her true purpose, to annihilate all goblins in the forest. He said the elf queen wanted to keep some goblins alive, not out of kindness, but for another reason, one he wouldn't bother asking her about. He declared that tonight he would lead his tribe to find out. Since his betrayal by humans, Lamphine had become cold and cruel to his enemies, a survival tactic, it seemed. He looked at Kasana with an emotionless expression, announcing he would personally deal with her. Kasana was petrified, uttering only faint, choked sounds, followed by a scream that echoed through the forest. It seemed Lam Tien had done something truly horrifying. The system announced Lam Tien had reached level 30, gaining 50 HP, 10 strength, 10 defense, and the skills invisibility and night vision. The scene of the elf village. From the elf queen's house came the sounds of moans of pleasure, pleas of exhaustion. Inside, the queen felt heartbroken because her evil desires were not satisfied. She felt regretful that last time she did not catch enough goblins to make tonics for these men. 3 men lay collapsed from exhaustion around her. She suddenly remembered Kasana and asked if she had returned. An elf quickly informed her that Kasana had left on a mission and had not returned, despite being past her expected arrival time. He suggested sending a party to help Kasana, which would also provide them with more goblins to kill and further boost the tribe's fighting abilities. The queen gave him full authority to send people to help Kasana and kill the goblins. A voice pierced the silence, announcing that Kasana wouldn't be returning today. The words sent a jolt of fear through the group, a stark realization that they were under attack. However, it seemed that she was exhausted after being served by 3 men, and her attack was like a child's play to Lamthine. He informed her that the elf tribe was currently surrounded, and if she surrendered obediently, he would consider treating them well. The elf queen collapsed to the ground, feeling her body numb. She couldn't even muster the strength to sit up. Lamthine informed her that the arrow she grabbed earlier had the body fluid of a goblin, which would cause rapid paralysis upon contact. The queen tried to get up in anger. Her body, lacking clothing and covered in sweat, became alluring. Seeing his prey struggling, Lamthine felt intrigued. He said that he knew she had used the goblin's heart as a stimulant. He was surprised that the elves were so depraved and used goblins like that. He guessed that she never imagined a day like this, a day when the goblins she despised would come here for revenge. Hearing these words, the elf queen felt even more scared. She realized that the person in front of her was the strange goblin Kasana mentioned earlier. Screams and cries for help from outside came into the room. The queen asked what was happening, and Lamthine sneered, saying that things seemed to have started. Without giving the elf queen a chance to wait, Lamthine dragged her to the window, allowing her to witness the scene below. He urged her to consider surrendering as soon as possible. Below, the elf village seemed to be burning, flames were everywhere, and war was raging. Goblins were killing the elves. The elves screamed and begged the elf queen to save them, pleading not to be captured by the goblins. Seeing her elf warriors weak against the goblins' attack, the queen's worry and fear overwhelmed her, and she asked a foolish question. She asked Lam Tien what he was to her tribe. Lamphine understood what she meant and said that the elf strength had not weakened. The problem was that his goblin tribe had become stronger and they had no hope of resistance. When the elves were stronger, they slaughtered the goblins. Now the goblins were stronger, and it was natural for them to slaughter the elves. Lamthine asked her to face reality and make a quick decision to minimize the damage. Lamthine approached the elf queen and whispered in her ear that he still needed more powerful warriors, so he would let her live. Whether the others in her tribe survived would depend on her decision right now. Outside, the elf men were still being slaughtered, and the girls were being captured by lustful hands, a barbaric scene. The queen's arrogance collapsed, and she knelt down and begged Lamthine, promised to fulfill all his demands as long as he did not kill her child. The queen sat down and showed her superiority. The plump fruits were displayed in a revealing way. She assured him that she would bring them with her and bear children for him. It is now the next morning in the goblin tribe. The sky is high with plenty of sunshine. The scenery is incredibly beautiful. Kasana and the elf queen met. Kasana was happy to see her mother again, but she is now captured. She has no hope for their future. The elf queen hugged her daughter. She apologized for underestimating the goblins. She didn't expect the goblins' strength to surpass the elves like this. Currently, there are only women and children left in the goblin tribe. They no longer have the ability to defend themselves and protect the elf bloodline. The queen realizes that they have become slaves from now on. They can only try to survive in the goblin tribe. She asks Kasana not to give up hope. Lamthine appeared next to the prison. He told the two to wait obediently to have children for him. He would provide enough food for both. If the two made trouble, he would kill both mercilessly. The elf queen is very obedient. She seems to have accepted her fate. She said she understood, but she has one request. Looking at the young elves who are playing with the young goblins innocently, the elf queen said they are her children. She begged Lamthine to let her take care of those children. He is currently a goblin, but he was once a human. He understands the feeling between mother and children. He is a bit hesitant about this proposal from the queen. At the same time, the system also appears a mission, the motherly love mission. At this time, Gobu called Lam Tien. She said she couldn't take care of all the children by herself. She suggested he let the queen take care of the children. Lamthine understands that these children are the future of the goblin tribe. After they grow up, they will increase the tribe's strength. So Lamthine agreed to the elf queen's request. At this time, Lamthine also checked his strength. He has currently met the requirements to upgrade himself with the added stats: blood plus 200, strength plus 30, defense plus 30. Lamthine was surprised when he met the upgrade conditions. The remaining stats were automatically converted into attribute points. Lamthine smiled softly. He decided to continue the path of strengthening himself by mating with strong girls. His current strength can already challenge Loader. After these elves give birth, he will go to Loader for revenge. Quickly, another month passed. In the goblin camp, there were cries of babies. The first children were born. By some miracle, the children born all have the appearance of a goblin. Their ugliness also scared their mothers, and they refused to accept the children as their own. But it's okay. Goblins are a creature with superior vitality. Lamthine wanted to know how many children were born. Gobu calculated for a moment. She replied that there were about 30 to 40 children. The conversation was interrupted by Kasana's scream, which worried Lamthine. She is pregnant with his child anyway. Quickly, Lamthine appeared at the location of Kasana and the elf queen. Kasana, a beautiful elf who had just given birth, was tied up. Beside her were 2 adult goblins. They wanted to have children with the elf girl, not caring about her weak resistance. But their actions were paid for with their own lives. Lamthine killed 1 goblin in fear of the remaining goblin. Because Lamthine had ordered that all elves after giving birth should be given rest until they were completely healthy, and those who violated the order would pay with their lives. Lamthine again ordered that from now on the elf's food ration would be increased by 1 apple. These actions made the queen feel more favorably towards Lamthine. The queen said he was a very different person from ordinary goblins. Lamthine said it was just a normal action and the elves would be more obedient if they were treated better. Ending a busy day, Lamthine began to carry out simulations to earn points from the system to exchange for new technologies. The current storyline is the Goblin's Revenge. With the content, you have worked hard and captured the elf tribe and have fertilized all the elves. After a period of pregnancy, the elves gave birth to children with stronger attributes than normal. Realizing that the tribe's strength had increased, and you decided to take revenge on Loader and the others, you decided to return to the village alone and find the location of Loader's knights. Currently, there are 3 situations for Lamthine to choose from. 1. Act alone. Try to kill Loader and the others, at 50 points. 2. Lead the goblins to attack and wipe out the entire village, at 30 points. 3. You wait for a better opportunity, and continue to observe because you think it's not time for revenge, at 10 points. Sitting by the fire, Lamthine continued to think. He wondered if he should find them for revenge so soon. Although Lamthine's current strength can be compared to Loader's, but the strength of Loader's companions cannot be underestimated. With his current strength, Lamthine chose option number 1, act alone, try to kill Loader and the others, add 50 points. What happened next? Lamthine found an opportunity when he found Loader alone. He ambushed Loader and almost managed to kill Loader. But there was a human knight who appeared and rescued Loader, and Lamthine died tragically under that person's sword. Then Loader's group returned to the capital and never appeared again. Immediately, the simulation process ended. A disastrous failure. Encountered the Holy Knight. No chance to escape. Rated 30 points out of 100 points. Reward multiplied by 30 life points. Simulated the Imperial City. The next time is 9 days. Lamthine was surprised that there was a Holy Knight in such a remote place, and that Loader's group would leave the village and never return. So finding them for revenge is extremely difficult. Hatred has taken over Lamthine's mind. Knowing he doesn't have much time, he wants to get revenge quickly. Lamthine decided to go to human territory, currently in the goblin tribe. Besides him, Gobu is the most listened to by other goblins. He decided to put her in charge of the tribe for a few days. The elf queen thought this was a crazy thing to do. If Lamthine came to human territory and was discovered by them, he would be arrested and killed. Lamthine didn't care much. He said he had a grudge against humans, and he had to get revenge. Before this decision, the elf queen offered to help Lamthine by using invisibility magic on him, helping him not to be discovered by humans. Lamthine chuckled. That's what he wanted. Lamthine said he didn't expect her to care so much about his safety. The queen used magic and said she was just afraid that after Lamthine died, the other goblins would rebel and treat the elves cruelly. And her children are all here. Only when Lamthine returns safely will they be safe. Lamthine only felt that the elf queen was very cunning, and she knew how to survive. Looking at Lamthine leaving, Gobu shouted she would help him take care of the tribe and hoped he would return safely. The scene shifts to the town of Kwangmin. The air here feels heavy with tension. Knights patrol the streets, armed and watchful, while the faces of ordinary citizens reflect their worry. These knights patrol, scanning the area as if searching for something. They don't notice a shadowy figure lurking in a dark alley. This figure is Lam Tien. He silently observes from the shadows, confused by the presence of the patrol and the town's heightened defenses. He suspected the Holy Knights had something to do with this. With growing suspicion, Lampthine leaves the deserted alley. He walks for a long time without hearing anything about Loder's group. This strangeness made Lampthine's steps become more hurried. The elf's invisibility spell ensures he remains unnoticed. To find useful information, Lampthine decides to go to the town square, where many people are gathered. He notices a group of armed individuals gathered in front of a large bulletin board. The board displays a ranking list of the knights in the town. The ranking list isn't particularly interesting. There's 1 platinum-level adventurer, 2 silver-level ones, and the rest are bronze-level. What catches Lampthine's eye is Loder's name at the top of the list. This confirms that Loder has grown stronger. This information is useful to Lampthine. He needs to use this time to gather more information and plan carefully. Rushing into things will inevitably lead to failure in his quest for revenge. Lampthine quickly blends into the crowd moving through the streets. Having been a human himself, Lampthine knows that the best place to gather information is a tavern. To his surprise, even before entering the tavern, he hears a familiar voice. A cunning smile spreads across his face. Inside, besides Loder and the knights of the temple, there's also Ephra. They're happily drinking together. One knight, raising his glass, expresses gratitude to Ephra and Loder for saving him from a 4-armed ape monster. Ephra says this is Captain Loder's victory, and she wouldn't have been able to help without his exceptional skills. Another man argues that the monster was too weak. The fact that the knight couldn't defeat it proves his weakness. This sarcastic remark enrages the knight. He tells the man that their story doesn't concern him and orders him to leave. A heated argument ensues and they're on the verge of a fight. The tense situation is quickly diffused by the tavern owner. He reveals that the dragon in Dragon Island is currently in its breeding season. It has been kidnapping livestock and humans to eat, and he suggests the two go defeat it instead of causing trouble in the tavern. These words from the tavern owner also catch Lam Tien's attention. He senses a sense of worry. If the dragon attacks this town, the capital's reinforcements won't arrive in time. Even if all the adventurers in the town unite, they wouldn't be able to withstand the attack of those ferocious dragons. Disaster seems to be looming over the town. These words make the atmosphere in the tavern tense. Loder breaks the silence with a laugh. Haha, a few dragons? Nothing to worry about. Let me reveal something to you all. A holy knight is on her way here. Loder confidently introduces the holy knight as his teacher. Once she arrives, she will join them in defeating the dragons. The king won't need to send his army. After the situation is resolved, their group will return to the capital. This news excites the crowd. They are astonished to learn that Loder's teacher is a holy knight. They feel confident knowing that a holy knight will help them defeat the dragons. If this is successful, Loder will become the town's hero. Flattered by the praise, Loder proudly stands up and raises a toast to everyone, celebrating the holy knight's arrival and their imminent victory over the dragons. While everyone is happily drinking, Lampthine has a different plan. He needs to make the most of this opportunity. Lampthine stands up, pays his bill, and leaves. His departure catches Loder's attention. He asks why Lam Tien is leaving without joining them for drinks. Lam Tien turns his head and looks at Loder, saying, "We'll have plenty of opportunities to drink together in the future." Then he leaves. His arrogance draws the attention of Loder and his men, provoking their anger. Time flies by. The people in town cheerfully celebrate the holy knight's arrival. Inside a church, a blonde-haired woman is praying. Loder stands behind her. Loder politely addresses her, "Master, the dragons are wreaking havoc everywhere. They're getting closer to the town. Now, no one dares to let their livestock out. The dragons might attack our town." The woman takes up her weapon and stands up. She is a beautiful woman with captivating blonde hair. Her silver armor gives her a commanding presence. She asks Loder about the things she requested him to prepare. Loder reports, "I have prepared 10 dragon hunting crossbows and I placed them at the highest points in the town." The woman seems pleased. She tells Loder to arrange everything well. If there's a mistake, that would be a huge embarrassment. The woman walks outside. The crowd below is immediately in an uproar. It's the first time they've seen the holy knight. They praise her beauty and wonder which man could possibly win her heart. Someone who thinks she is an unattainable existence. Even the king wouldn't dare to express an opinion about her actions. The woman looks at the worried crowd. The situation is very dangerous. It's unnecessary to gather so many people here. Order the knights to disperse the crowd. But it seems that's no longer necessary. The commotion draws the attention of the dragon. It charges at the town, terrifying everyone, and one unlucky person was taken by the dragon. The woman anxiously announces, "This is just a scout dragon. Once it appears, more dragons will surely attack here. Loader, take your men to the wall and prepare to fight. Outside the town, on a cliff, a goblin scurries along. He informs his leader that the dragons are coming. From what he observed, there are many guards on the wall. The goblin asks what he should do next. The leader tells him to be silent and wait. It's not time to act yet. This leader is Lam Tien. He has brought his army here. He's waiting for the dragons to inflict damage upon the town. Then it'll be his chance to seek revenge. Disaster struck quickly. The entire sky of the town was covered by vicious dragons. Their number was uncountable. Those who were accustomed to bullying the weak, like Effer and Loader, were terrified when they saw the number of these fearsome creatures. Unable to escape, they could only stand there and watch what was happening. The only calm person now was the blonde knight and the soldiers who were trying to defend their home. After using a crossbow to kill a dragon, the knight looked at the soldiers. She asked them if they understood how to use the dragon-slaying crossbow. Use it and destroy those dragons. They had great faith in the power of the knight from the capital. Believing that she would help them win, they quickly put arrows into the large crossbows and aimed at the dragons to attack. Quickly, many arrows were shot and a few dragons were killed, but it seemed that these losses meant nothing compared to the immense number of dragons. The human attack was effective, but it only made the dragons more frenzied, and they realized their chances of winning were slim. Right now, the sky was covered by dragons. The ground was becoming dark. They realized something was coming. Immediately the roar of the dragons made the soldiers' ears hurt, so much that they had to kneel on the ground. Quickly, Loader and Effer realized that what was coming was the Dragon Mother, the leader of these dragons. Appearing in the sky of the town, the Dragon Mother's size was many times larger than the other dragons. To frighten the soldiers, they tried to use crossbows to attack the dragon, but they knew that with the Dragon Mother's huge size, these arrows could not pierce its scales. The Dragon Mother looked at the people on the wall with angry eyes, because these tiny creatures had dared to kill her children. The dragon roared, then gathered a fireball. This was its dragon fire skill. After preparing, the dragon used its skill to attack the wall. Seeing the huge fireball heading towards them, the soldiers could only run away in fear. They thought that the town would be destroyed by this attack. The blonde girl asked the soldiers not to panic. She asked them to let her handle the dragon. At this time, she slammed her sword to the ground. From there, a blue magic circle appeared, then slowly spread around. That magic circle quickly created a protective barrier around the town. This barrier was so strong that it blocked the Dragon Mother's attack and trapped the dragon outside. Standing far enough away, Lamthine could see the whole battle. He was surprised that the villagers could actually withstand the attack of a powerful monster like the Dragon Mother. Perhaps the good thing for Lamthine at the moment was that the Dragon Mother was not injured, and it could continue the fight. Lamthine quickly used his skills to observe the power information of the dragon. This was a monster named Dragon Mother level 79, race Ancient Dragon with the title Dragon Island King, HP 4100, Strength 510, Defense 580, Skills Dragon Fire, Long Transformation, Dragon Roar, Ancient Call with overall power 2900. This was the strongest monster that Lamthine had ever seen. When observing the power information of the blonde woman, Lamthine became more worried, because she seemed more like a monster than a dragon. Her name was Alicenia level 80, with the Profession Swordmaster title. Holy Sword, Strongest Swordsman, Dragon-Slaying Hero, Top Human, Heavenly Swordsman, HP 1700, Strength 690, Defense 700. Skills, Sword Chi, Man and Sword Fusion, Iron Wind, Lai Tin Wei, Tu Kayam Choi and Sin, and many other skills, and she had an overall power of 4000. Seeing Alicenia charging towards the Dragon Mother to attack, Lamthine felt frightened. He realized that her power was too abnormal, and felt happy that the one facing her was not him, otherwise he would be in trouble. The battle of Alicenia and the Dragon Mother was terrifying, but it seemed that the Dragon Mother was a little weaker than Alicenia, but with a large amount of blood, he believed that the Dragon Mother could help him by some time. Seeing the Dragon Mother and Alicenia had moved far away from the town, Lamthine thought that this was a good opportunity for him to attack. This was a chance for him to take revenge. He ordered his goblins, telling them to act according to the plan. They would enter the city and be divided into two teams. One team was responsible for causing chaos, the other team would hide and wait for a chance to attack. The goblins, with their extremely scary, greedy eyes, obeyed Lam Tien's orders and entered the town. The town was in chaos, fires raged everywhere, and dragons still circled the sky, searching for prey to attack. Loader was wounded after trying to kill a few dragons. He felt they were difficult to deal with, but they were just monsters after all. How could they defeat a brave man like him? His confidence was shattered, however, when the townspeople started screaming, announcing that goblins were attacking the town. The soldiers couldn't believe it. They thought the goblins weren't stupid enough to attack a human town. Goblins were just weak creatures in their eyes, but they were currently fighting dragons, and they didn't have time to deal with goblins. Then, A woman's scream quickly erased any doubt. She was running in terror, a horde of goblins at her heels. The sight of the disgusting goblin, since there weren't many left. He and Ephra would go deal with the invading goblins. This was exactly what Lampthine wanted, it seemed. While chasing after the goblins, Loder and Ephra stumbled into an ambush Lampthine had set up. With the prey trapped, a goblin ordered his comrades to attack. Ephra was quickly captured by Annette and cried out to Loder in fear, but he couldn't help her. He was lying on the ground, riddled with arrows, surrounded by goblins. He wondered how there could be so many. The other soldiers saw this and immediately ran towards Loder to help, but it seemed they couldn't get any closer, surrounded by goblins. What was even more frightening was that Lampthine had appeared behind two of the soldiers, drawn by the other goblins, who hadn't noticed him. It was too late when Loder warned them to be careful behind them. The two soldiers were quickly killed by Lampthine. Seeing this, Loder and Ephra were terrified, more terrified than when they had seen the dragons, because they knew there was no one left to save them. Lampthine now approached Loder and Ephra, expressing surprise that he could capture them so easily. Loder roared in anger, saying he would kill Lampthine and all the goblins. But Lampthine quickly used a kick to remind Loder of his position. He was prey and Lampthine was the hunter. Lampthine ordered the goblins to take Loder and Ephra out of the town through the sewer, while the other goblins followed him to the wall to kill the other soldiers. Lampthine's plan was carried out quickly. The town was filled with screams of people being attacked by goblins. This drew Alicinia's attention, and she couldn't understand what was happening. Why would goblins dare to attack at this time? But Alicinia's distraction came at a cost. The Dragon Mother had transformed her dragon body into a seductive and terrifying girl, who told Alicinia she should focus and she didn't have time to worry about others. She charged towards Alicinia, aiming a massive fist at her. Alicinia, however, scoffed at the attack, calmly standing her ground as the Dragon Mother charged. "How much more punishment can you take?" Alicinia sneered, unleashing a powerful advanced skill. With Alicinia's might, the Dragon Mother couldn't dodge and had to endure the excruciating pain. Alicinia reveled in the Dragon Mother's howls of agony, but her delight was short-lived. Although the Dragon Mother seemed defeated, she was now worried about Roder and if he could handle the remaining dragons and goblins. Her question was quickly answered with a resounding explosion, confirming that Roder was struggling to handle the chaos. The wounded Dragon Mother saw the goblins appearing at that moment as an opportunity. She used Alicinia's momentary distraction to her advantage, transforming back into her full dragon form and escaping before Alicinia could react. As she fled, the Dragon Mother vowed to return and exact revenge on Alicinia after recovering from her injuries. Alicinia was enraged, but she couldn't chase after the Dragon Mother because she had to protect the villagers. She swore to find Dragon Island and wipe out every dragon there. Later, peace had returned to the town. Alicinia had dealt with the remaining dragons and goblins, but she was furious at the incompetence of Roder and his group. They couldn't even defeat the goblins. As Alicinia entered the town center, a knight informed her that the Empire, and they looked to her for protection. Despite her rage, Alicinia understood that the lives of these villagers were more important than the captured knight. Her duty was to protect them. She blamed Roder for his weakness, for not even being able to defeat goblins. The only thing she could do was to send a message to the capital, requesting assistance. Meanwhile, Lampthine had returned to his tribe, greeted with cheers and celebration for his victory. He had also brought back two humans, Roder and Ephra, as trophies. Upon arrival at the camp, the goblins placed Roder and Ephra under guard at the base of a large tree. They were warned to be good or they would be eaten. As Roder surveyed the scene, he was surprised to see that the goblin tribe was keeping many elves captive. This explained their unusual strength. Ephra was worried. She thought that there were goblins in this tribe with hero level. Roder understood the severity of their situation. He asked Ephra if her powers had returned, and she gave him good news. With her current rate of recovery, she would soon be able to use magic again. However, their conversation was overheard by Lampthine, who commended Ephra on her impressive healing speed. Ephra was startled by Lampthine's appearance, particularly because he knew her name. Before she could fully recover from her shock, Lampthine seized her by the foot. Ephra asked, "What are you going to do?" Lampthine answered with a chilling smile, then used his claws to dig deep into Ephra's flesh, causing her to cross all traces of their presence. The woman wanted to find but could not find. Wiping the blood from his hands, Lampthine instructed a goblin to lead all the second-generation goblins into the forest to hunt as many monsters as they could. The goblin promptly obeyed. Lampthine knew that this event was significant and that he didn't need to prove he was good because he was inherently a cruel monster, and now he would use his role as a cruel monster to teach them a lesson. Ephra had been paralyzed by the goblin's poison, her consciousness fading. She would be Lampthine's target for revenge. Roder knew what was coming. Despite being beaten by the goblins, he struggled and cried out, begging Lamthine not to harm Ephra. But Lamthine had no mercy for his enemies. He said that he would make Ephra suffer for all the pain he endured, and this was just the beginning. He grabbed Ephra and told Rotor to open his eyes and enjoy the show. His goblins will serve Ephra with all their heart. Rotor was horrified at the prospect of her being defiled by their dirty hands. The sun is high in the sky, and the goblin guards are changing shifts. A goblin exits the tent, looking satisfied after torturing Ephra. Another goblin watches him with worry, reminding him that the chieftain has ordered Ephra not to be killed. The happy goblin replies that she's still very much alive. Ephra's clothes are now in tatters. She is no longer screaming as she was when first tortured, but her silence is even more terrifying. Loader is forced to witness everything. He looks at Ephra with worry, urging her to stay strong and not give up, assuring her they'll be rescued soon. Ephra just whispers that she understands. But Loader is quickly beaten by another goblin for talking when he shouldn't, and another goblin approaches to torture Ephra. Inside the tent, the Elf Queen and Kasana are tending to the children and witnessing everything. Seeing Ephra being tortured, the Elf Queen concludes that Lamthine has a vendetta against humans. Kasana feels scared and thinks they are worse off than the two humans. At least they have fruit to eat. It seems like both the Elf Queen and Kasana are pregnant with Lamthine's children. Gobu arrives at that moment. She confirms that Lamthine does have a vendetta against humans, and these two are the ones who are responsible. The Elf Queen, seemingly having changed her mind about Lamthine, claims he is the most unique goblin she's ever seen. A goblin driven by revenge, capable of anything. Even while he tortured her with his weapon, she felt a peculiar fondness for him. The Elf Queen has shattered the image of the noble elf in my eyes. Kasana, standing beside her, seems to feel her mother is happy about being tortured by Lamthine. Back to Lamthine, a goblin rushes in to inform him that the second-generation goblins have returned. This surprises Lamthine. The second-generation goblins return with their loot, various monsters, and are greeted with enthusiastic cheers by the other goblins. After all, besides reproduction, their main interest is meat. Upon seeing Lamthine, the goblin immediately greets him. He's a large goblin, level 33. With the profession of warrior, he has the title Son of Elf, blessed by the Lord and Monster Hunter, with 470 HP, 142 strength, 168 defense, and numerous skills. His overall power reaches 500. Lamthine is pleased with the second-generation goblin. They have evolved into large goblins after surpassing level 30, and their strength is catching up to Lamthine's. Lamthine asks why they returned so early and if the hunt was successful. The goblin reports that they had hunted all the nearby monsters and had to venture further west into the forest, but they encountered a giant goblin tribe that was slaughtering smaller goblin tribes. This surprises Lamthine. It's the first time he's heard of the giant goblin race. He only knew of the demi-humans as the creatures closest to goblins in size. Another goblin informs Lamthine about this tribe. They are the Bloodtooth tribe. They are all giant goblins. In a previous hunt, he had discovered a tribe being attacked by these giant goblins, and the scene was terrifying. Thinking about these large goblins, Lamthine doesn't feel worried, but excited. If he could capture their chieftain and create a third generation of goblins, they would have enough power to resist the human invasion. Loader, hearing Lamthine's words, laughs mockingly. He tells Lamthine to keep dreaming his death is approaching. He says even if goblins become strong, knights will defeat them. Lamthine stares at Loader with a terrifying glare. He thanks him for the reminder, saying he had forgotten Loader was there. As a reward, Lamthine allows the other goblins to play with Loader, instructing them not to kill him. The goblins pounce on Loader with a ravenous appetite. It seems they find humans strangely alluring, even men. While the goblins enjoy themselves, Loader screams in desperation. He curses the goblins and threatens them, saying humans will come and destroy their wretched tribe. Ephra remains silent, her head down, as she watches everything unfold. Perhaps she has learned to stay quiet. Hours later, Loader lies unconscious on the ground. His face reveals the pain he has endured. Meanwhile, the goblin tribe is having a feast with alcohol and meat. It seems everyone is happy except for Loader and Ephra. Gobu asks Lamthine about his plans to attack the Bloodtooth tribe. Lamthine confirms it. He says they want to survive, so they need to be the strongest. He wants to not only attack the tribe but also capture their chieftain. Lamthine has decided on a name for his tribe. From now on, they will be called the Tribe of Frenzy. The name seems to fit the goblin's character. They roar with joy at having a formal name. Gobu feels apprehensive about Lamthine's decision. She warns him that the Bloodtooth goblins are very strong and have destroyed many other tribes. It will be very difficult to attack them and capture their chieftain. Lamthine tells Gobu not to worry, saying he knows their current strength very well. Lamthine looks at Ephra, as if he has an idea about using her in the war. Before the battle begins, Lamthine visits the Bloodtooth tribe to gather information. He chooses a suitable location to observe the entire area and is curious about the strength of these giant goblins. The Bloodtooth tribe has houses with modern architecture, showing that these goblins are intelligent. Inside, many giant goblins are eating and drinking, but Lam Tien thinks he can easily defeat them. Lamthine notices the fear in the eyes of the goblins inside the house. They are scared when they see their chieftain. It's a giant goblin, much larger than the others. The goblin is level 50, with the profession of high-level warrior. He has the titles Monster Hunter, Goblin Hero, Breeding Machine. With 700 HP, 239 strength, 14 defense, he's equipped with a bone hammer, and his overall power reaches 900. Lam Tien is thrilled to see such a strong goblin and already has a plan for him in the future. Lam Tien smirked as he noticed that the goblin leader wasn't as tough as he seemed. With a combined strength of 900, several goblin warriors could easily take him down. However, capturing the leader alive was a different story. Given the enormous size of these goblins, any poison wouldn't be very effective, paralyzing toxins wouldn't work, so Lamthine had to come up with another plan. He thought about Ephra's binding magic that had been used on him before and realized it could be useful on these goblins. The thought made him grin. He decided to talk to Aphra when he got back to his tribe. Before long, Lamthine was back at his own tribe. Everything seemed peaceful, but that was just a facade hiding the horrors taking place within. He arrived at the place where Aphra was being held. She was lying motionless on the ground. Her soft curves and milky white skin were visible through her torn clothes. A goblin carrying a bucket of hot water approached Lamthine. He cheerfully announced that Ephra was still alive because he had followed Lamthine's instructions. Lamthine praised the goblin for his diligence. Keeping Ephra alive for as long as possible was Lamthine's plan. This wasn't out of kindness, it was revenge, and the suffering he was inflicting on her was nowhere near enough compared to what she had done to him. Lamthine walked over to Ephra. She just lay there, groaning. It seemed like she wasn't even trying to fight back, just begging anyone, anything to kill her. She wanted to atone for her sins before the Holy Mother. Lamthine sat beside her and used a warm cloth to wipe her down. The warmth made Ephra feel a little better. Lamthine spoke to her, telling her she needed a little more care before she could be used again. In her haze, Ephra opened her eyes. She saw Lamthine, the nightmare of her life. She screamed in terror, sitting up and demanding Lamthine stay away. She began to rant incoherently, shouting things like, "Monster, I'm going crazy. It hurts so much." To stop her from yelling, Lamthine slapped her heart across the face. The pain ended the screaming, leaving her with empty eyes filled with fear about what would happen next. A moment later, Lamphine held Ephra's seductive body close, sharing the warmth of his own. He whispered in her ear that her punishment was over. These words pulled Ephra back from the brink. Tears streamed down her face, soaking her cheeks. She trembled as she asked Lamphine if he was telling the truth. She worried if she was hallucinating or if this was just another cruel game from the goblin. With a gentle expression, Lam Tien assured her he would end her suffering if she met his one condition. She had to abandon her faith. Ephra was confused. She wanted to know what he meant by faith. Lam Tien explained that she had to choose between believing in the Holy Mother and believing in him. He told her she could become his pet and escape the suffering she was enduring. While he spoke, he stroked Ephra's head as if she were a pet. Ephra quickly made her choice. She grabbed his hand and began licking it. Her gesture was undeniably seductive. She showed him that he could do whatever he wanted to her and she wouldn't resist. Lamthine gently stroked Ephra's tongue, praising her for a good choice. He told her that as a reward, he would be her only master, the only one she had to serve. He also gave her a new name, Little Bitch. Ephra's spirit was broken and she had completely given up resisting. She put on and no longer felt any shame about being naked. She was ready for Lamthine to admire her body and help her bathe. She even thanked the Holy Mother for being kind to her, saying she was willing to give everything for this. Ephra lay there, completely enjoying being served by Lamthine. This was the moment he began to put his plan into action. Lamthine asked Ephra if she would really do everything for this, and it seemed like this was a coincidence when he had something he needed her to do. Lamthine wanted to see her use her holy light technique, the name he had given it. Ephra said she could use the holy light but didn't know what he wanted her to create. After Lam Tien explained what he was looking for, they both stood before a stone pedestal where a book lay. This was what Ephra needed to perform the spell. She said she understood what he wanted. Without hesitation, Ephra began chanting. A golden light emanated from the book, and she started to recite incantations. It was a captivating scene, reminding us that this was a world of magic, not just lust. Quickly, a giant cage of holy light appeared before them. This was exactly what Lamthine had been hoping for. He praised Ephra for doing a great job. Having completed his task, Lamthine started to take his pet for a walk. It wasn't a coincidence that they ended up near Loder's cell. Seeing Ephra walking freely and looking healthy, Loder was overjoyed. He roared, asking her if she had recovered. He demanded that she quickly destroy the goblin and use her powers to heal his body. Lamthine just laughed in contempt. He reminded Loder to pay close attention, saying, "Don't you see? She's completely submitted to my protection." Loder didn't believe him. How could a temple priestess be tamed by a goblin? As if to prove his master right, Ephra knelt down and licked Lamthine's boots like a dog. Lamthine happily asked Ephra to tell Loder that she was doing this willingly. Ephra quickly confirmed his words and said that everything she was doing was voluntary. Ephra's words and actions shattered Loder. He knew his last hope was gone. Loder howled in anguish. He believed that what Lamthine was doing would lead to one outcome: the extinction of all goblins in the world. The only reason you goblins exist is for humans to slaughter you. The temple people will kill all of you. Lamthine was silent for a moment upon hearing this news. He had not expected Ephra to have such a special background. He knew that humans would send incredibly powerful individuals to rescue her. After a brief pause, Lamthine thanked Loder for providing him with such valuable information, stating that it deserved a reward. Lamthine then instructed the goblin guard named Goblin to take good care of Loder, ensuring he would not be idle. The goblin understood what Lamthine meant, waved the whip in its hand, and promised to take good care of Loder. Lamthine knew that his preparation time was running out. He wanted to quickly conquer the Bloodfang tribe, so he asked Ephra to accompany him there. Together, they would defeat and tame the tribe, as Lamthine knew this had to be done as swiftly as possible. Meanwhile, in the Bloodfang tribe, things were also busy. A small goblin reported to the tribe chief that all preparations were complete. The chief felt satisfied with this report. Today, they would attack the southern goblin tribe and bring back the elves there for all the goblins to have fun. Through this conversation, it became clear that these giant goblins also intended to attack Lamthine's tribe, and they were excited about the rewards they would receive after winning. At that moment, the chief's attention was drawn to a shout. A goblin guard rushed in, reporting that a strange goblin had infiltrated the tribe and was demanding to meet the chief. The chief was surprised by this goblin's boldness and wanted to know where this lowly goblin had come from. At this point, Lam Tien appeared before him. Lam Tien politely greeted the chief, saying he knew that the chief was a hero-level goblin, with intelligence nearly equal to a human's. So Lam Tien wanted to come and speak peacefully. The chief found Lam Tien's unique attire strange, assuming he must be a mutated human. However, Lam Tien insisted that he was a goblin, just a little smarter than the average one, but it seemed Lam Tien's patience had run out. He looked around at all the goblins and introduced himself as the chief of the Mad Tribe, stating that his purpose in coming was to capture their leader. As for the rest of the goblins, Lam Tien gave them two choices: surrender or die. The threat from such a small goblin angered the Bloodfang chief, and he was a bit shocked to learn that this goblin was the leader of the tribe that had enslaved elves. Lamthine commented that the chief had good genes and told him to surrender and join his tribe. But this offer was considered an insult, and the goblin chief thought Lamthine was a fool for coming here and saying such things. The chief grabbed Lamthine's head with his large hand, telling him to be quiet. He was pleased that Lamthine had come here himself. After killing Lamthine and all the goblins in his tribe, the humans and elves there would belong to them. The promise of such a victory reward once again incited the other goblins to cheer, urging the chief to quickly kill Lamthine. Lamthine thought they were all too foolish and that he had wasted enough time there. If he didn't want to capture the chief alive, he wouldn't have wasted so much time. Just as he finished speaking, Lamthine acted. He drew his knife and swiftly cut off one of the chief's arms, the sudden attack catching him off guard, leaving him unable to dodge. The chief's hand fell to the ground, much to the shock of the surrounding goblins. The chief lay on the ground, screaming in pain, ordering his soldiers to kill Lamthine quickly. The goblins around immediately rushed toward Lamthine, determined to kill him in revenge. Confidently, Lamthine raised his hand, commanding the hidden goblins to reveal themselves. Instantly, goblins from the Bloodfang tribe were killed by sharp iron spears. The sudden appearance of these goblins caught them by surprise, prompting them to ask where these attackers came from. Lamthine's goblins had acquired stealth abilities and moved silently, skills they had developed after devouring male elves, and they served as assassins in the tribe. Lamthine's goblins asked him about destroying the tribe, and Lamthine agreed. He ordered all the hidden goblins to emerge and kill them all. Swiftly, many goblin warriors appeared, with the element of surprise and sharp weapons. They quickly slaughtered the goblins of the Bloodfang tribe. The Bloodfang tribe's chief realized he had been tricked. Lamthine had come here pretending to negotiate to catch them off guard. All attention had been focused on him, but the chief had considered escaping. With his strength, escape would be easy, and no one could stop him. But before fleeing, he wanted to do one thing: kill Lamthine, an ugly and cunning goblin. The chief charged at Lamthine with a punch that used all his might. Lamthine just stood there, smiling mockingly. This was the moment for Lamthine to use Ephra. The moment her name was called, Ephra used her powers. A cage made of light quickly materialized, trapping the chief inside. The chief struggled and smashed against it but could not escape. He realized it was a light magic spell, and a goblin shouldn't be able to use light magic. After saying this, a look of surprise and confusion crossed his face as he saw a human appear, fawning at Lamthine's feet like a dog. Lamthine petted Ephra's head, praising her as a good dog. He remarked that she had become stronger after joining the dark side and promised to reward her when they returned. Ephra began whining like a small dog, seemingly delighted by her master's praise, and she didn't forget to flaunt her seductive curves. Moments later, the Bloodfang tribe chief was bound and lying on the ground. He still refused to surrender, continuously cursing Lamthine. Lamthine didn't care. He was satisfied with the current outcome and told the chief he should just be silent and accept the reality. A new day dawned on the Goblin tribe. In the dungeon, the chieftain of the Bloodtooth tribe lay motionless, his massive body bound to a large boulder, blood staining the ground around him. Nearby stood Lamthine, a small knife in his hand, a testament to the terrifying scene he had orchestrated. Lamthine breathed a sigh of relief, having successfully subdued the goblin after a grueling effort. The threat was now neutralized. Loader, in the dungeon next door, trembled as he witnessed the entirety of Lamthine's torture. He wondered how this monster could have captured a goblin of heroic rank. The Elf Queen and Gobu were summoned to the scene. Lamthine instructed Gobu to oversee the forced breeding of the elf women with the goblin, ensuring those with reproductive capabilities were selected. Gobu readily agreed, eager to fulfill the task. Lamthine then roughly threw Ephra towards Gobu, demanding she obey and participate in the forced pregnancy. The prospect filled Ephra with terror. With this issue resolved, Lamthine moved on to his next schemes. He asked the Elf Queen to help him change clothes, stating he needed to meet a friend. This announcement took her by surprise, and she questioned who this friend might be. Lamthine smiled enigmatically, mentioning that his friend was a very important person. From observing Loader's arrogance and Ephra's unique status, Lamthine realized that human reinforcements would soon arrive. With his current strength, they could only fight against ordinary knights, not a sword saint. Raising children from a heroic-ranked goblin would take a considerable amount of time. Lamthine needed someone to buy him time, and the friend he referred to was the Dragon Mother. On the vast coastline, Lamthine stood before the corpses of two massive beasts. Bound together, there was a reason behind this. Dragon Island lay in the sea, more than 100 kilometers from Lamthine's current location. For convenience and speed, Lamthine chose to use the scouting dragons as transportation. To achieve this, he brought the beast corpses to the beach. The pungent smell of blood would attract the dragon's attention. As expected, a dragon swiftly appeared, drawn by the scent and charging towards Lamthine. Lamthine quickly concealed himself within the carcass of a beast, successfully securing a free ride to Dragon Island. With the dragon's speed, Lamthine traversed the vast ocean and landed on the island. Upon arrival, the dragon hastily tossed food into a large pit before hurriedly departing. It seemed the dragon was terrified and unwilling to linger. Lamthine, along with the two beast carcasses, fell onto a colossal pile of bones. This softened the impact somewhat. Lamthine crawled out of the carcass, feeling vindicated in his assessment that these dragons didn't hunt for themselves. The next task was to locate the Dragon Mother. As Lamthine stood there, he sensed something appearing behind him. A giant eye, emanating the light of death in the dark cave, stared intently at the gift accompanying the food. Compared to the colossal Dragon Mother, Lamthine was but a tiny ant. The Dragon Mother declared that she recognized Lamthine. Apparently, he was the leader of the goblins that attacked the town the other day, and she wanted to know what he was doing on her territory. She threatened to eat him if he didn't give her a truthful answer. Other dragons appeared, their gaze fixed on Lamthine with terrifying intensity. Lamthine calmly requested the Dragon Mother to calm down. He had come with a proposal for cooperation between their tribes. The suggestion surprised the Dragon Mother. She expressed her astonishment at encountering an intelligent goblin and declared her willingness to discuss this cooperation. As she spoke, the Dragon Mother transformed back into her dragon human form. She was a captivating woman. Her stunning beauty does not detract from the aura of a legendary creature. The Dragon Mother stated that she wanted to hear about the benefits of this cooperation. She emphasized that if the benefits Lamthine presented were satisfactory, she would consider not eating him. But this thread didn't faze Lamthine. He pointed out that the Dragon Mother harbored a desire for revenge against the Sword Saint for the damage she had inflicted. The benefits of their cooperation were evident in the recent battle in the human city. Thanks to the goblin attack on the city, the Dragon Mother had escaped a troublesome situation. The Dragon Mother was shocked and amused by the idea of a lowly creature like a goblin scheming against the Sword Saint. Yet, this audacity seemed to pique her interest. The Dragon Mother wanted to learn more about this cooperation. She was particularly interested in hearing how Lam Tien planned to deal with the Sword Saint, whom she referred to as the bitch. Lam Tien remained calm. He explained that their cooperation was simple. He requested that the Dragon Mother continually send her dragons to harass the City of Light. The Dragon Mother stepped forward, placing her enormous hand on Lampthine's shoulder. What she wanted to know was how Lampthine intended to accomplish this. She wanted to know how a small, weak group of goblins dared to challenge the mad bitch, and she wanted to know the specific plan. Lampthine grinned mischievously. He suggested that a direct attack against someone like the Sword Saint wouldn't be enough. They would attack her heart, destroy everything she held dear, and kill her slowly. The Dragon Mother let out a terrifying laugh. She understood Lampthine's idea. Using goblins as tools to kill without involving the dragons was exactly what she wanted. Lampthine felt satisfied. Their conversation seemed to have borne fruit, and the alliance was established. The Dragon Mother agreed. However, she hadn't expected to find such an intelligent goblin among them. The more she looked at Lampthine, the more she liked him. The Dragon Mother contemplated offering him a reward. Lam Tien understood what that reward meant, and the thought of those dragons in their heat cycle filled him with dread. He simply stated that his small stature was unsuited for such a reward. His response disappointed the Dragon Mother, and she decided to offer him a different reward. We now return to the scene of Lin Tien's tribe. The tents had been replaced by wooden houses, and the tribe was surrounded by a protective wall. A wooden stake stands in the center of the tribe, with Loader bound to it. Fear and anxiety are etched on his face as he wonders why the knights haven't arrived to rescue him yet. He believes that if he remains there, he'll be tortured to death by these goblins. Determined to escape, Loader contemplates his options, but finds himself surrounded by goblins. Just as he's pondering, his eyes light up with excitement as he spots something terrifying descending from the sky. Upon closer inspection, he realizes it's a dragon. Loader shrieks in terror, alerting the goblins to the dragon's arrival. He begs them to release him, fearing he'll be incinerated by the dragon's flames. The sight of the dragon fills the goblins with apprehension. They grab their weapons, ready to fight. They wonder what brought the dragon here. As the dragon approaches, they notice someone riding upon its back. The dragon doesn't attack, but gracefully lands in the heart of the tribe. Everyone quickly recognizes Lampthine riding on its back. Lampthine steps down, triggering a frenzy of excitement among the goblins. He instructs the dragon to remain within the tribe and avoid venturing into the surrounding areas. The dragon responds with a series of deep growls, signifying its agreement. Once Lampthine steps away from the dragon, the goblins, emboldened by his presence, approach, jumping with joy and deeming Lampthine incredibly cool. The whole event sends chills down Loader's spine. His first thought is Lampthine really a goblin? He desperately hopes for the knight's swift arrival. Meanwhile, in the City of Light, everything has been restored to its former glory. The damage caused by the dragon attacks has vanished. Today, a reinforcement army from the capital has arrived. These are incredibly powerful knights, all sworn to the Sword Saint. After a long wait, the Sword Saint, impatient for action, urges the knights to formulate a plan to rescue Loader and Urfra as soon as possible. Currently, Lam Tien is engaging with his system, the current storyline, nurturing the third generation of Goblin. You have achieved good results through your stealth attacks on the City of Light and the Bloodfang tribe. To counter the Sword Saint and the human royal family, you have trained Gobu and Kasana in the Demon Forest. After 1 month, you will reach level 50. Gobu will reach level 60. And Kasana will reach level 45. Option 1. If your strength isn't sufficient, continue to level up by killing monsters in the forest. You will gain 0 points. Option 2. Capture prisoners and breed more goblins. You will gain 10 points. Option 3. Speed up the upgrade process and move to the stage after 1 month. You will gain 20 points. Contemplating these options, Lam Tien starts thinking. The emergence of the third option means no human attacks in the near future. Driven by curiosity, Lam Tien chooses the third option. As soon as he selects option 3, a ring of light envelopes his body, and the system immediately announces a time acceleration. You cannot accumulate enough experience in the Demon Forest, but Lam Tien is surprised to find that the new simulation can be carried out after only 1 month, with a reward of 20 points and a 20-point increase in health. Lampthine wakes up feeling uncomfortable as his body struggles to adjust to the accelerated time. Currently, Lampthine is level 50 with 850 HP, 270 strength, and 300 defense, resulting in a total power of 1000. Lampthine feels disappointed because his overall power hasn't increased significantly. His thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door. Gobu enters, visibly worried. She informs him about something happening to the newborn goblins. Lam Tien rushes towards the scene. From afar, he sees many newborn goblins on the ground, surrounded by an aura of sorrow. The sight before him filled Lam Tien with worry and heartache. He desperately wanted to know what had happened. The elf queen was clueless as well, but she noticed that the newly born third generation of goblins seemed exceptionally weak. This sorrowful atmosphere was shattered by Loder's laughter. He mocked Lamthine, calling him a foolish goblin without a brain for trying to breed powerful goblins. This comment made Lamthine suspect Loder knew what had happened. Lamthine glared at Loder, his eyes filled with anger. Demanding an explanation, Loder reveled in Lamthine's fury and laughed even louder. He explained that the higher a goblin's level, the more difficult it was to survive. You thought you could conquer the world through reproduction? Lamthine stared coldly at Loder, thanking him for the information. But this time Loder had spoken too late. Lamthine turned to Goblin, who was standing nearby, and gifted him Loder. From that moment on, Goblin could do whatever he pleased with Loder, but he couldn't let him die. Goblin was delighted with this arrangement. Loder's previous joy vanished, replaced by sheer terror. He screamed at Lamthine, calling him a cruel monster and vowing to never forgive him. Even in death, ignoring Loder's rant, Lamthine began to ponder. It was already too late to raise new hero-level goblins, but he desperately needed a large number of them. Without them, defeating the Sword Saint would be nearly impossible. He wondered if there was a way to level up himself. At that moment, a face with terrifying eyes appeared behind him. It was the dragon he had brought back. The sudden appearance startled Lamthine. He wondered what was happening to the dragon. He knew a dragon in its heat cycle was incredibly dangerous, and he was curious what it was planning to do. In the blink of an eye, the massive dragon transformed into a petite girl, her body possessing alluring curves. Seeing this stunning girl in front of him, Lamthine realized the mysterious gift the dragon mother had promised him. Before Lam Tien could react, the girl leapt onto him. With a look of pure excitement, she began to torment him. This ordeal unlocked a major achievement for Lam Tien, increasing his strength to 520, his defense to 1200, and his HP to 1500. After the experience, which everyone can only imagine, Lam Tien stood up, his spine feeling as though it was about to snap. He said he only needed to drink a little dragon blood to evolve. But this dragon was doing this to him. He thought she was trying to vent her frustration on him. But the girl didn't seem satisfied. She charged at him once again, to delay the situation. Lamthine pointed toward the goblins in the distance and told the dragon girl to fulfill her mission of helping them evolve by sharing some dragon blood before continuing their private matters. She immediately rushed toward the goblins at an astonishing speed, eager to complete the task and return to Lamthine. Her fierce expression and incredible speed terrified the goblins. Meanwhile, Lamthine used this moment to find a way to escape. As night fell, the goblin tribe threw a massive celebration. The goblins danced around the bonfire, excited that, thanks to the dragon blood, they had all evolved into large, muscular goblins. Lamthine watched from afar, feeling very satisfied with the new power he and the tribe had gained. Thanks to the dragon blood, he and his followers had evolved to hero level. However, their overall strength was still not strong enough. And to maintain his leadership position, Lamthine decided they needed better weapons. He commanded the system to open the shopping center, and a variety of items appeared before him. He was pleased that he had accumulated 180 points, enough to purchase a few high-end items. After scrolling through the options, Lamthine's attention was drawn to a special weapon, an elemental crossbow. Its size was ideal for long-range and stealth attacks, with the ability to absorb and shoot arrows imbued with water, fire, wind, lightning, and poison attributes. Next, he saw a strange blade capable of blocking 3 bare-handed attacks. Although it cost 80 points, Lam Tien decided to buy it, believing that the weapon could save his life in dangerous situations. Holding the elemental crossbow in his hands, Lam Tien was curious to test it out. At that moment, Loder was still tied to a wooden stake. He seemed to sense that something was about to happen to him. Loder's fears became a reality when Lam Tien chose him as the first candidate to test out his new weapon. As Lam Tien slowly approached, Loder nervously asked what he intended to do, and so Loder became the first to experience Lam Tien's power at hero level. While Lam Tien tested the crossbow, not far away in the demon forest, a party of 4 heroes was advancing deeper into goblin territory. The purple-haired archer girl constantly complained about having to venture into such a boring place. She believed that low-level creatures like goblins weren't worth her effort. If I'd known we had to walk this far, I would have stayed in the city to help the Sword Saint fight the dragons. A knight in the group advised her not to whine, reminding her that the Sword Saint was busy defending the city from the Dragon Mother, so it was up to them to deal with the goblins. It was a chance to earn merit without expending too much effort. The atmosphere suddenly shifted as the group's mage warned that something was approaching. Within moments, a giant spider with long legs and sharp fangs appeared before them. The mage was visibly nervous, as she had a deep fear of spiders. Before the group could react, the purple-haired archer swiftly shot an arrow, easily killing the spider. She disdainfully remarked that it was only a level 3 monster, nothing to worry about. However, their captain remained cautious and urged the group to stay alert. From a distance, a strange figure began to approach. Seconds later, a giant goblin with 4 arms appeared before them. This was a goblin at hero level, yet its appearance didn't worry the group. They were confident in their strength and believed this was the leader of the goblins they had been sent to find. They felt lucky, thinking they could complete the mission easily. The giant goblin roared furiously, shaking the surrounding forest with its terrifying echo. In front of it, the hero party immediately formed a battle stance under the captain's command. The mage and archer were ordered to provide long-range support, while the captain and another knight prepared to charge at the monster. But before they could act, the heavily armored knight spoke up. "Captain, no need to rush. You've already taken out plenty of goblins on the way here. Let me handle this one alone." The captain looked at the knight with concern. The armored knight mentioned he had slain many giant goblins before, but this was the first time he had faced a goblin at hero level. After some hesitation and seeing the confident demeanor of his teammate, the captain agreed, trusting in his comrade's strength. He believed the battle would be over quickly. The knight smiled in gratitude, then concentrated all his power into his spear. He gathered energy at the tip and unleashed his signature attack, Storm Spear. With all his might, the spear shot forward toward the goblin at an incredible speed, and the knight was sure that the goblin wouldn't be able to dodge it. But as the spear flew toward its target, the sight that unfolded left the entire party in shock. The goblin wasn't impaled. Instead, it effortlessly caught the spear as if it were merely a toy. The knight stood frozen, trembling in disbelief. His voice was stuttering with fear. "No way. How could it have caught that attack?" Terror spread as the giant goblin casually tossed the spear back at them. The captain shouted, ordering the mage to cast a protective magic shield immediately. The glowing shield enveloped the 4 of them, but upon impact with the spear, it began to crack little by little. The captain's horror deepened as he realized he had severely underestimated the strength of a hero-level goblin. The once cocky purple-haired archer had completely lost her arrogant confidence. She agreed that it was strong, but it couldn't withstand her ranged attacks. And luckily, there was only one goblin here. But before she could finish her sentence, excruciating pain flooded her senses. Her body was impaled by a sharp hand from behind. A smaller, but agile and deadly goblin had used an elf stealth technique to assassinate her. Chaos erupted as the captain realized they were being ambushed by multiple goblins. Giant goblins emerged from the shadows, quickly surrounding the remaining 3 members. Their eyes gleamed with hunger, as humans were their favorite prey. A fierce battle broke out, but in the end, the hero party was defeated. The goblins didn't kill them but instead captured them to serve their dark purposes. One of the giant goblins grabbed the mage, declaring that she was his prize. But immediately, another goblin interrupted. "This doesn't belong to you. This spoils of war from the tribe. The chief has ordered all humans be taken as prisoners. You're not allowed to keep any spoils for yourself, especially after letting one escape." Goblin, the first goblin, was displeased at being challenged. He believed his contributions were great and that he now had enough strength to claim the prize for himself. Another goblin also thought that the 4-armed goblin was right. They were very powerful now and they were the ones with the final say in the tribe. Other goblins began to agree, chanting Goblin strength and feeding his ambition. He started to entertain the idea of overthrowing Lam Tien as the tribe's leader. The goblins returned to the tribe with many prisoners, making everyone happy, cheering and praising. But the elf queen sensed something was wrong. She worriedly asked the Lam Tien whether he could still control the goblins. The 4-armed goblin immediately displayed his strength, grabbing the hero captain and declaring, "This one is my prize. I will eat him." Lam Tien, remaining calm, stepped forward and demanded, "Goblin, put him down." He explained that the captive had valuable intelligence that he needed. The 4-armed goblin sneered, "If you want him, then trade your woman for him." This statement made the elf queen and the others nervous. But Lamphine remained calm. He asked the 4-armed goblin if he knew what he was saying and reminded him that Lamphine was still the leader of the tribe. It seemed that Goblin wasn't a complete fool. He glanced over at Goblin standing behind him, believing that Goblin was stronger than Lam Tien, and that now he would follow Goblin's orders. Standing before the 2 massive goblins, Lam Tien appeared small, but he stayed composed. He turned to Goblin and asked if what Goblin said was true. Was Goblin now the leader? Lam Tien offered Goblin a chance. If he captured Goblin, he would overlook this entire incident. Hearing this, Goblin burst out laughing, believing that Lam Tien was just a weak goblin, and that only the strongest goblins could lead the tribe. He declared that he would kill Lam Tien today and take control of the tribe himself. But before Gobu Tien could finish his words, he was grabbed by Goblin's giant hand. Gobu Tien's expression twisted in fear, and he asked Goblin what he wanted to do. There was no answer. Without hesitation, Goblin crushed the traitor's head, leaving the other goblins in stunned silence. Lam Tien's expression remained calm, as if everything that happened was not worth worrying about. The death of a disloyal goblin was not a loss. Goblin understood Gobu Tien's intention, but he also had his own thoughts. Bowing his head respectfully before Lam Tien, he spoke in a tone filled with reverence. Leader, after evolving, I've come to realize many things. I'm not like those arrogant fools. I respect you, but I also believe in absolute strength. That's why I want to challenge you for leadership. At that moment, Lam Tien could see Goblin's full stats, level 50, 1700 HP, 340 strength, 280 defense, and an overall power of 1200. Even so, Lam Tien wasn't worried. His body began to radiate flames, causing the other goblins to grow uneasy. Lam Tien praised Goblin's strength, then asked, "Are you sure you want to challenge me?" The rebellious goblins roared in excitement, demanding that Goblin kill Lam Tien to prove who the true leader of the tribe was. They shouted provocations, claiming that if Goblin won, he would have all the women as his spoils. Amidst the taunts, Lam Tien only smiled slightly, his eyes calm. It seems like there are quite a few goblins willing to follow you. Lam Tien then approached Goblin, still wearing a mocking smile. But before we begin, confirm one more time, do you really want to face me? Lam Tien issued a command to the entire goblin tribe, make your choice. If you stand with me, step forward now. If not, I won't hesitate to destroy all of you. The human captain, who had been lying on the ground, was shocked to see Lam Tien using magic. But he still thought of Lam Tien as a common goblin and felt lucky that the goblins were engaged in an internal conflict. This was his chance to escape. He believed Lam Tien would be quickly defeated, as the power gap between the two sides was too great. Even if Lam Tien could use magic, it would be useless. Quickly, the goblin tribes split into two. With a slight smirk, Lam Tien remarked, "It seems more of them trust me than you. Only a few are willing to follow you. Are you sure you want to continue?" Goblin raised his large sword, declaring that he was different from the other goblins. He fought for one purpose, to seek power. The battle began swiftly. Goblin launched a series of fierce attacks at Lam Tien, but Lam Tien effortlessly dodged each strike. Watching the fight, the human captain was completely shocked. He hadn't expected Goblin to move and attack so quickly and with such force, especially in the dense forest. But Lam Tien dodged with ease, and the captain began to doubt his initial assumptions about Lam Tien's true strength. After continuously evading and keeping his distance, Lam Tien praised Goblin as an excellent opponent. Then, with a swift motion, he pulled out his crossbow and aimed it at Goblin. The arrow shot forth, imbued with the power of fire. Goblin was surprised, especially by the speed of the arrow. Unable to dodge, he decided to block the attack with his weapon. When the arrow clashed with Goblin's sword, an explosion echoed through the air, but Goblin remained standing. Lam Tien was surprised that Goblin had managed to withstand his attack. Immediately after that, with incredible speed, Goblin appeared right in front of Lam Tien, swinging his sword to attack with all his strength. Before that powerful slash, Lam Tien just smiled. A massive explosion erupted in the middle of the village, a sight that filled both the human captain and loader with terror at the goblin's sheer power. The other goblins stared anxiously at the center of the explosion. As the smoke and dust cleared, the scene left all the goblins around in utter disbelief. Lam Tien had effortlessly blocked Goblin's attack with just one hand. In his other hand, he held his crossbow, aimed directly at Goblin. "You're strong," Lam Tien said calmly, "but unfortunately, you're no match for me." The battle was over. Goblin had no strength left to continue and knelt before Lam Tien, accepting his defeat and awaiting death. Lam Tien's expression remained calm as he silently wondered where Goblin had learned all this and noted that Goblin appeared to be a goblin with remarkable willpower. In the distance, the rebellious goblins trembled with fear, all falling to their knees and begging Lam Tien for mercy. They swore never to rebel again. Vowing their undying loyalty, Lam Tien glanced over them, showing no hint of sympathy to him. Traitors were a significant threat, and they needed to be eliminated to ensure the future of the tribe. He ordered Ephraud to heal Goblin, stating that he would give him a chance to live if he remained loyal. This left Goblin deeply surprised. But Lam Tien was not as merciful toward the other goblins. He commanded the loyal goblins to kill the traitors. By now, Goblin had fully recovered. He thanked Lam Tien for his mercy and sparing his life, vowing to remain forever loyal to Lam Tien from that day forward. Goblin also offered to personally handle the execution of the rebellious goblins. Goblin's power was overwhelming. The rebellious goblins had no chance to resist and were swiftly wiped out. Once the slaughter was over, Lamthine ordered the remaining goblins to eat the traitors to increase their strength. The goblin tribe chanted Lamthine's name, demonstrating their absolute loyalty to their leader. The captain, lying on the ground, was gripped with fear, a question echoing in his mind. Loader, what kind of monster did you provoke? This isn't a normal goblin. This is a creature that could make the entire empire tremble. Lamthine slowly walked toward Loader, a cold smile on his face. Apologies for making you watch such an imperfect display. Lamthine shrugged nonchalantly before continuing. But Loader, did you really think this trash could save you? How naive. Loader clenched his fists, his eyes burning with hatred as he began to shout. It's all the Sword Saint's fault. She hides in the city like a coward, missing the chance to wipe out this tribe before they grew this strong. The captain turned his head to glare at Lamthine, his gaze full of anger. I underestimated you, but don't get too arrogant. Once the Sword Saint slays the Dragon Mother, she'll lead the Royal Knights to destroy this entire place. Lamthine chuckled softly, calmly sitting down in front of the captain. You think the Dragon Clan caused trouble in the city on their own? Interesting, but I'm relieved to hear that. It seems things with the Dragon Mother are progressing smoothly. The captain's eyes widened as the painful realization hit him. Everything happening in the city was part of Lamthine's plan. He stared at Lamthine's calm face, knowing that a knight could be killed but never humiliated, rather than suffer the same fate as Loader. The captain wished for a quick death and hoped that Lamthine would grant him that. Lamthine respected the man's bravery, recognizing him as someone worthy of respect. But unfortunately, he was no longer human. Against enemies, there could be no mercy. Lamthine granted the captain's final request, seeing it as a small gesture of pity. Meanwhile, in the City of Light, the Sword Saint was rudely awakened by the urgent calls of her subordinate. She sat up irritated and asked, what's got you in such a panic? The dragon attack was just repelled. Have the knights returned already? The soldier stammered. Why yes, Sword Saint, the knights have returned, but sensing something wrong in his tone, the Sword Saint demanded he speak clearly. The soldier, trembling, finally explained, all of the Silver Blade Knights have been wiped out. Only one knight survived and returned. This news left the Sword Saint stunned. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could just a bunch of goblins do something like that? After changing clothes, she rushed to the temple to check on the condition of the surviving knight. The nuns informed her that he was critically injured with wounds so severe that even healing potions had no effect. The Sword Saint's eyes turned icy as she stared at the dying knight on the bed. The deaths of the Silver Blades, the kingdom's bravest warriors, filled her with rage. She demanded to know why he was so badly injured and what had happened to the others. The knight, lying on the bed, his voice weak and trembling from his wounds, reported that they had encountered a group of goblins with hero-level abilities. He pleaded with the Sword Saint to rescue the others. His voice grew fainter, but she could still hear the desperation in it. They were too strong. We couldn't fight back. Please save the others. His words became smaller and smaller, reflecting the fading life force within him. Before he died, he mustered the last of his strength to warn those present to be extremely cautious, for these goblins were unlike any they had ever encountered. The knight died amidst the sorrow of those present. However, they seemed unconvinced that a group of hero-level goblins could have caused such devastation. One enraged knight, clenching his fists, vowed revenge for his fallen comrades. To him, hero-level goblins were just weak, lowly creatures. He would go out and wipe them all out. But before he could leave the room, the Sword Saint called him back. She told him to stop and calm down. With the dragons attacking the city more and more frequently, sending out another force to eliminate the goblins would weaken the city's defenses. The goblins might take advantage of the situation and launch a surprise attack on the city once again. The Sword Saint realized that she alone couldn't handle all the potential threats. Her gaze swept around the room, as sharp as a blade, with an angry tone. She reminded the knight that she was in command here. You will immediately recall certain of his own strength. He felt that dealing with a group of hero-level goblins would be a piece of cake. Half of Kazimov's face was disfigured with a large scar running down to his neck. A testament to his strength and brutality, he reassured everyone not to worry and to wait for good news from him. The scene shifted to the goblin village in the Devil's Forest. Under the leadership of Lamthian, in a short time, the entire village had undergone a dramatic transformation. It had become a paradise for goblins. Time flew by, and Lamthian was now able to initiate another simulation. He requested the simulation system to start, setting his goal as confronting humanity. He wanted to guide the giant goblins, forge an alliance with the Dragon Mother, and create a heroic tribe. He also aimed to eliminate any rebel subordinates, consolidate the king's power, and increase the loyalty of the goblins and elves towards him. However, this idyllic period didn't last long. Kazimov, known as the Death God, under the orders of the Sword Saint, launched a surprise attack on the tribe at midnight, aiming to eliminate Lamthine. Although Kazimov was ultimately defeated, the tribe suffered immense losses. This simulation was incredibly valuable for Lamthine, but he found it absurd that someone would dare to launch a sneak attack on his tribe. He wondered if this man named Kazimov, acting alone, was truly capable of inflicting such heavy damage on his tribe. Lamthine now had 3 options for this simulation. 1. Relocate the tribe to avoid being hunted. 2. Prepare for Kazimov's attack and wait for him to strike. 3. Proactively attack Kazimov and kill him. Lamthine dismissed the idea of waiting for Kazimov's attack and allowing his tribe to suffer losses. To minimize casualties, he chose the 3rd option, to take the offensive against Kazimov. After selecting the 3rd option, the system displayed a message stating that this was a life or death battle for Lamthine and wished him good luck. Lamthine also received 20 points from the system and an additional 20 points for his health. This simulation was complete, and the time until the next simulation was 3 days. The system's failure to provide a definitive result regarding the winner left Lamthine somewhat uneasy. He understood that Kazimov seemed to be a powerful individual, and before taking any action, he decided to investigate Kazimov's background. The target of Lamthine's information gathering was Loader. Upon hearing the name Kazimov, Loader became excited and laughed maniacally. He was thrilled to know that Kazimov had appeared, seeing it as a chance for his own rescue. In his joyous state, Loader warned Lamthine that his death was imminent and that Kazimov was a formidable warrior, having killed numerous titans with his bare hands. Observing Loader's perpetual grin, Lamthine noted that he had complete faith in Kazimov's strength. He wanted to understand what Loader meant by Titan warriors. Loader happily explained that those Titan warriors were monstrous creations bred by the opposing empire. They were massive creatures genetically modified with Titan genes, capable of defeating level 5 monsters with their bare hands. At this point, Loader became incredibly excited, shouting, "It's all going to end. You're all going to die." Lamthine was satisfied with this information. He concluded that this Kazimov must have some talent. Loader continued to laugh, telling Lamthine to await being skinned and disemboweled by Kazimov. Lamthine rubbed his chin in thought. He realized he needed to be more cautious. It was best to send out scouts to gauge Kazimov's strength beforehand. Meanwhile, Kazimov ventured into the Devil's Forest alone. On his journey, he didn't encounter any monsters, which was highly unusual. He soon arrived at the site of the battle between the hero-level goblin group and the knights. Seeing the bloodstains and equipment scattered on the ground, Kazimov felt no pity. He scoffed at them, considering them useless trash. Taking a deep breath, Kazimov remarked that the scent of blood in the air made him feel incredibly comfortable. He mused to himself, wondering if he could enjoy a comfortable massacre in this place this time. After moving a short distance, Kazimov heard someone screaming for help. He paused, wondering where the sound was coming from. The demonic forest was shrouded in a thick fog, the stillness broken only by the steady rhythm of Kazimov's horse's hooves and the rustle of dry leaves beneath them. His keen eyes scanned every decaying tree trunk, his urgency fueled by the faint cry for help he had heard. Kazimov, ever cautious, stopped his horse a safe distance away. Before him, under a fallen, rotten tree, was a young woman with golden hair, her pale face streaked with tears, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her whimpers pierced the eerie silence of the forest. Kazimov asked curiously, "Who are you?" The woman looked up, her eyes cloudy with tears, and in that moment, Kazimov recognized her Ephra. A wave of emotion swept over him, a mix of surprise and exhilaration. Ephra, who he believed was dead, was standing before him. "Please help me," she whispered, her voice weak. The unexpected encounter momentarily relaxed Kazimov's guard, and he began to approach. The woman started to walk towards him, her voice laced with desperation. "I managed to escape the goblin tribe, but Loader is dead." Though Ephra's words stirred something within him, Kazimov maintained a cold demeanor. He ignored her pain, focusing on the critical information. "Where is the goblin tribe?" Ephra trembled, her eyes seeming to glaze over as she pointed ahead. "Over there. But it's a terrifying place." With the answer he sought, Kazimov wasted no time in urging his horse forward. Ephra called out to him in panic, pleading to come along, but Kazimov simply threw back a cold reply. "Don't bother me. Go straight ahead. I have an important mission." Kazimov knew the reason for his indifference. As a seasoned adventurer with the title of Despair Knight, he possessed the ability to increase his strength when fighting alone, a 30% boost to all his attributes, and an additional 20% boost for every enemy he defeated. This boost had no time limit, lasting until the end of his battles. The more isolated he was, the stronger he became. Loader's death in his plan was an advantage, allowing him to amass power uninterrupted. Lost in his calculations, his horse stumbled into a hidden trap. The animal collapsed, throwing Kazimov to the ground. However, with his practice skills, he landed safely, ready for combat. Just then, Ephra appeared behind him, her face a stark contrast to the weakness she displayed earlier. Kazimov's eyes narrowed in surprise. "Why haven't you left?" His question wasn't answered with words but with a swift attack. A surge of powerful light erupted from Ephra's hand, catching Kazimov off guard, leaving him unable to dodge. The blow wasn't deadly, but enough to make him realize the betrayal. Kazimov looked at her, his eyes filled with confusion. "Why are you doing this?" Ephra's face was emotionless, her voice cold and detached as she replied, "My master ordered me to kill you." Before he could comprehend the situation fully, another beam of brilliant light shot out from Ephra, creating a giant pillar of light that engulfed his entire being. Everything around him seemed to disappear within that blinding light. Yet, a plume of purple smoke silently surged from the heart of the explosion, spreading quickly and enveloping a wide area. From within that hazy mist, a giant arm belonging to Kazimov suddenly emerged, seizing Ephra and pulling her close. In the blink of an eye, Kazimov's entire body materialized behind Ephra, his eyes glowing red like a predator ready to pounce. He had her completely under his control, his powerful hands clasped tightly, rendering her immobile. Kazimov's face contorted into a cruel grin, his voice cold and menacing. "You thought I only enjoyed killing monsters? I find stripping the skin off traitors like you quite entertaining as well." Ephra struggled, but his overwhelming strength rendered her helpless. Kazimov continued, his voice dripping with malice. "Well, I'll use you to gain strength before I take down the Goblin tribe. You'll just be a pawn in my game." But just then, a cold voice echoed from behind. "Now I know why you dared to come alone to destroy my tribe." The powerful voice jolted Kazimov. His eyes instantly shifted, becoming tense and alert. From the shadows, Lin Tian emerged, his small frame shrouded in a menacing aura. He chuckled softly, and in his hand was Kazimov's sword, a magnificent blade with the properties of death. It had high-speed attack, group attack, and a 90% critical strike rate. Truly a valuable weapon. If you succeed in sneaking up and gaining the passive ability, our tribe would surely suffer great losses. Lin Tian's sudden appearance filled Kazimov with unease, but what alarmed him most was how easily Lin Tian had taken his sword without any resistance. Kazimov wondered, how could such a lowly goblin do this? Fear began to gnaw at him. Seizing the opportunity while Kazimov was distracted, Ephra broke free from his grasp and ran towards Lin Tian. She bowed her head and addressed him as her master. Kazimov realized he had fallen into a trap. Ephra had been a tool to lure him here. Anger surged through him, and he roared, "Ephra, you are a despicable wretch. Just to survive, you willingly become a slave to these lowly goblins." Lin Tian chuckled, gently stroking Ephra's hair as though rewarding a loyal pet. He said coldly, "Becoming my slave is an honor. She's a good dog, obeys commands." Lin Tian remarked that Kazimov had disappointed him. He thought he was an exceptionally powerful individual, but it turned out he was just a twisted killer, relying on sneaky assassinations to passively gain strength. The contempt in Lin Tian's voice further ignited Kazimov's rage. He growled, "I don't care who you are, but for a goblin like you, I don't need a sword. My strength alone is enough to send you to hell." Kazimov lunged, drawing the short sword from under his cloak and aiming for Lin Tian with terrifying speed. But as he closed in on his target, Lin Tian remained still, showing no sign of worry or preparation for defense. And then, just as Kazimov was about to strike, he abruptly halted. His eyes widened in panic as he noticed two hero-level goblins and a giant dragon behind Lin Tian. Their gaze was cold and unforgiving. Lin Tian smirked triumphantly, casually saying, "You will experience true despair. Kazimov, let's see which of us goes to hell first." Without hesitation, the giant dragon opened its maw, a massive torrent of fire spewing forth, engulfing Kazimov's entire body. The flames consumed him, turning everything into a nightmare. Kazimov's screams of agonizing pain echoed through the demonic forest. The scene opens in the peaceful goblin village. This tranquility is shattered by the excited shouts of the goblins as Lamthine returns, especially since he brings a trophy. Kazimov. In the prison, Loder stares in disbelief as Lamthine throws Kazimov's charred corpse at his feet. It's a demonstration of how Lamthine has defeated the very being Loder considered unstoppable. Lam Tien addresses Loder, who is consumed by despair. "Is this the all-powerful death hunter you spoke of?" Sadly, he overestimated himself and fell to my hand. Despair fills Loder's eyes, but he lets out a maniacal laugh. Another one dead, you bastard." He feels the Sword Saint is foolish for protecting the people of the City of Light. She sends strong warriors after us. only to have them become fodder for the goblins. A stupid strategy. Loader even suspects an alliance between the Sword Saint and Lampthine. Later, Lamptien throws Kazimov's body in the middle of the village. Surrounded by the elite goblins he has handpicked, Lamptien focuses on nurturing goblins with special potential. And Kazimov's body is a valuable resource, ripe for exploitation. With an authoritative gaze, Lamptien surveys the goblins before him and coldly states, "Gobishin, this prey is yours to eat first. The leftovers will be for the others." Gobishin is one of the most exceptional goblins chosen by Lampthine. He raises his head, a greedy look fixed on Kazimov's remains. He thanks Lampthine in a raspy voice. The other goblins stare longingly, eagerly awaiting their turn. Lampthine knows that evolving into a rare goblin type isn't just about luck. It requires talent and genetics. Gobishin is chosen for the first experiment because he's the most promising. Despite his small stature, Gobishin's eyes hold fierce determination and ambition, a stark contrast to the other goblins. Lampthine sees in Gobishin a blend of hypocrisy and brutal perversion. A perfect seed, he anticipates the emergence of a rare goblin species. Lamb-themed smirks, his eyes filled with cruelty and calculation. Regarding the Sword Saint, he's thoroughly reviewed the system and realizes that she commands only 3 squads of knights with significant strength. Now, the Silver Sword Knights are vanquished, and everything seems to be going according to plan. The news of Kazimov's defeat will undoubtedly hit the Sword Saint hard. To turn things around, she'll have to act and retaliate. Lampthine feels this is the perfect time to use the simulation system to explore the upcoming events. He immediately orders the system to start the simulation. The simulation completes quickly, while the specifics are not revealed. Lampthine's eyes gleam with delight. He comments that the Sword Saint is greedy, and he's won this game of wits. In his excitement, Lamptien orders Gobishin to gather all the goblins. Tomorrow, they will undertake a large mission, causing all the goblins to buzz with excitement. Lamptien declares that this time, he will proactively eliminate all threats. Soon, the City of Light is shaken by a major event. The news of Kazimov's death. Knights have found his remains outside the city. The news stuns anyone who knew Kazimov. He had only entered the demon forest a day ago. How could those lowly beasts kill Kazimov and bring his body back here? The Sword Saint quickly recognizes that their continuous failures to wipe out the goblins, coupled with the constant harassments from the dragons, have escalated the situation. All of this cannot be random. This is definitely a conspiracy by the vile dragon and the goblins. They are using the civilians in the City of Light as hostages, trapping them and letting them die slowly. We can't stay passive any longer. The Sword Saint's face contorted with rage, fueled by vengeance. The Sword Saint ordered the assembly of all the members of the Battlecry Brigade. For safety, she sent a squad of knights back to the capital for reinforcements. While the Sword Saint prepared her army to attack the demon forest, a squad of knights quickly returned to the capital. One of the knights anxiously spoke up, "Captain, even if we ride and eat at the same time, it will take at least 4 days to get to the capital. If everyone leaves, who will protect the city from the dragons? I'm fast, let me go to the capital alone for help. Everyone else stay and help defend the city." A girl in the back worriedly spoke. She thought this was all part of the Sword Saint's plan. She worried that they might be ambushed by goblins along the way. If that happened, she hoped someone would escape to bring the news and get more help. She believed that with the Sword Saint's current strength, breaking out of the city to kill goblins or dragons wouldn't be a big challenge. However, right now, neither goblins nor dragons are something the Knights Brigade can handle. The Sword Saint wouldn't dare risk it, because if she charged out, one of the two forces could take advantage of the opportunity to attack the City of Light. The captain agreed with this assessment. He believed that simultaneously defending the city and the Knights Brigade was beyond the Sword Saint's capabilities. Therefore, calling for reinforcements was an extremely wise strategy. Their job was to get back to the capital as quickly as possible. However, Lamptien had anticipated all of their plans. The Knight Squad quickly stopped when they found the suspension bridge ahead destroyed. Looking at the collapsed bridge, the girl in the squad felt a surge of anxiety. She was sure this was no accident. If they stayed there, they would be in danger. She suggested they quickly take a detour, but the captain firmly disagreed, calling it a mistake. The destroyed bridge was a clear sign that the enemy wanted them to take the detour and planned to ambush them there. However, if the bridge had collapsed, they certainly wouldn't be there anymore. This is the safest place. With that confidence, the captain ordered everyone to quickly repair the bridge before nightfall. As directed, the entire team worked diligently. And before nightfall, the bridge was repaired. Full of confidence and without a hint of doubt, they started to cross the bridge. But what they didn't expect was that everything was part of Lampthine's calculations. As the Knight Squad stepped onto the bridge, a massive shadow suddenly blocked out the sunlight. A sense of unease crept in, and as they looked up, their hearts nearly stopped. A giant dragon hovered in the sky. Especially terrifying was the sight of a goblin standing on the dragon's back. The Night Squad no longer had any doubts. They were all certain of the dark alliance between the dragons and the goblins in the demon forest. But the bitter truth was that it seemed too late. From above, Lamthine chuckled with mockery. His laughter was like a knife stabbing into the knight's pride. You work quickly. You didn't choose to take a detour, but repaired the bridge. Were you afraid of my ambush? His voice echoed, filled with contempt. The captain was stunned by the sight, unable to believe his ears, as he heard a goblin speaking fluently like a human. His eyes blazed with anger. You destroyed this bridge. He roared, wanting to kill Lamthine immediately. But before he could act, the dragon spewed a fiery breath, destroying the bridge once again. The entire Night Squad scrambled to escape the raging flames. Fortunately, they managed to cross the bridge without falling into the abyss. But more terrifying was the fact that their fighting spirit had been scorched by the flames. Fear began to engulf each of them. The captain began to yell in despair, cursing those damn goblins and vowing to capture and torture Lamthine slowly, letting him die in agony. The knight on the ground roared in fury, swearing he would capture Lamthine and make him suffer a slow and painful death to pay for all he had done. Riding atop the giant dragon, Lamthine merely smirked at the challenge. Looking down at the hero-level goblins surrounding the knights, he responded with a mocking tone, "I'd like to see you try. But first, you'll have to defeat my entire army and the dragon mother that's on her way here." The knights gasped, realizing they were fully surrounded by goblins. Their eyes filled with horror at Lamthine's mention of the dragon mother. A girl in the group hastily spoke to the captain. "If the dragon mother really shows up, we don't stand a chance of winning." However, the captain saw this as a rare opportunity, thinking that with both the goblins and the dragon mother gathered here, they might be able to resolve the threat to the City of Light once and for all. He turned to the dwarf beside him and ordered, "Bane will hold them off. Use your speed to break through the encirclement and get back to the City of Light to inform the Sword Saint." Bane roared in frustration before charging headlong into the goblins in front of him. As if he were ready to fight and kill them all, his ferocious action and loud battle cry caused the goblins to hesitate momentarily, immediately taking up battle stances. However, Bane only charged in, swinging his axe to create chaos, then quickly broke through the goblin lines, running away while shouting, "Once the Sword Saint arrives, all of you will be wiped out." Suddenly, the girl noticed something off, observing the gleeful, mocking expressions in the goblin's eyes. She exclaimed, "Captain, something's wrong. These goblins aren't really trying to stop Bane. This could be a trap." On the dragon's back, Lamthine laughed triumphantly, complimenting the girl for her intelligence. "That's right. This is the trap I set. There's no dragon mother coming. It was just a tactic to lure that foolish woman away from the City of Light. Just watch what happens after she leaves the city." His voice brimmed with excitement, confident his plan would succeed. Realizing they had fallen for Lamthine's scheme, with catastrophic consequences looming, the knight captain lost his composure. Shouting in desperation, he commanded his team to rally and attempt to eliminate Lamthine. Believing the City of Light had no hope left, their only chance of survival was to hold on until the Sword Saint arrived to save them. The battle erupted fiercely as a hulking goblin, with a muscular frame far superior to the others, charged the captain with a massive sword. The captain immediately blocked the attack with his axe, and the sheer force of their clash shattered the ground around them. Stunned by the goblin's strength, the captain staggered back, trying to increase the distance between them. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized the sword the goblin was wielding. It was Kazimov's sword. From above, Lamthine observed with a pleased expression. Satisfied with his subordinate's power as the goblin stood toe-to-toe with the knight captain of the City of Light, he mused, "It seems I won't need to intervene much this time." Yet Lamthine felt a tinge of disappointment, as these knights were weaker than he had anticipated and wouldn't provide much skill or strength for the goblins to absorb. Realizing time was running short, Lamthine decided to end the battle quickly before the Sword Saint could arrive. He drew his small crossbow and leapt off the dragon's back, ready to deliver the final blow that would end this bloody battle. With Lamthine's powerful support, the battle quickly concluded in complete victory for the goblin army. The captain's two comrades had perished, their bodies becoming a feast for the ravenous goblins. The captain, despite his desperate struggle, couldn't withstand Lamthine's crushing magic and fell to his knees, trembling and filled with despair. He was forced to witness his comrades torn to pieces, blood spattered everywhere, devoured by the goblins in a gruesome, brutal display. Fear and hopelessness washed over him as he realized his arrogance had led to this horror. The captain's suffering was brought to an end when Lamthine delivered mercy in the form of an arrow straight to his head. The captain's lifeless body fell to the ground as goblins around him cheered. celebrating their victory and the spoils they'd won. Lam Tien reminded them that time was short and they needed to clear the battlefield quickly. Lam Tame then looked toward Goblin, the goblin in whom he placed his greatest hopes and whom he had selected to become something special. He ordered Goblin to consume the bodies swiftly and evacuate before the sword saint arrived. Goblin's blood-red eyes gleamed with delight and hunger as it leapt onto the girl's body, tearing into her flesh without hesitation. The scene was truly horrifying, a ruthless creature shredding a human, blood and flesh scattered everywhere. Not long after the goblin army departed, the forest echoed with the heavy footsteps of the sword saint and her knights arriving at the scene. The sight before them horrified even the sword saint. The ground was littered with half-eaten bodies, blood, flesh, and white bones of the 3 knights she had sent. Bane, the only survivor, rushed to his comrades' bodies, sobbing in silent rage and anguish, cursing the vile goblins and vowing revenge, even if it meant giving up his life. The sword saint surveyed the entire scene, her anger rising, despite arriving as quickly as they could. They had still been too late, and even the bodies of her knights hadn't been left whole. The ground bore the massive footprints of dragons, proof that dragons had indeed participated in this battle. Enraged, the sword saint cursed the goblins and dragons that had brought this tragedy. At that moment, Bane swore he had seen a goblin commanding a dragon, surely their leader. The thought of a goblin with the power to command dragons sent a chill through the sword saint. She demanded Bane recount every detail immediately. Bane quickly explained that it was the goblin leader who had ordered the dragon to burn the bridge, leaving no doubt that the captain and others had been slain by the goblins and incinerated in dragon fire. Sword Saint, you must destroy them and avenge our fallen. Her face grew thoughtful as she examined the traces around them. She noticed that there were indeed signs of dragon fire, but they were sparse, and the bones bore marks of goblin gnawing. It all suggested that there had been far fewer dragons here than she'd anticipated. A sudden sense of dread gripped her. She realized that this might be a trap and that the goblins and Mother Dragon could have conspired to lure them away from the City of Light. The Sword Saint immediately ordered a retreat, urging her troops to return to the city as fast as possible, fearing it might now be in grave danger. Bane stood paralyzed, horrified at the thought of the consequences if the Sword Saint's suspicions were true. And just as the Sword Saint had feared, by the time they returned, a devastating sight awaited them. The City of Light lay in ruins, every structure reduced to rubble, engulfed in flames and blood. Countless bodies lay strewn across the ground, while fires raged through every corner of the city, leaving a trail of endless casualties. The Sword Saint collapsed in despair amidst the wreckage, her gaze empty, her mouth trembling as she murmured, "No, this can't be, none of this is real." The boy screams, "Father!" falling to his knees in front of the man's body. The emotion on his face shows deep sorrow and despair. In the background, a knight with long blonde hair looks on with sadness, bowing his head slightly. The girl tries to approach the boy and calm him down, gently reaching out her hand. But the child desperately embraces his father's body, shaking with emotion and unwilling to pull away. The boy is forced to push the girl. In anger, the child shouts, "Get out! Every day you only pretend to protect us." His hand pushes the knight away with fury, showing his resentment and distrust. The boy, blaming the knight, continues, "When the goblins came, you were nowhere to be found." The knight looks embarrassed and saddened, the child's words clearly hurting her. Following this, a succession of silhouettes appear, representing the voices of the people in the crowd. They accuse the knight, "Who wants your apology? If you can't protect us, what kind of saint are you? We raised you for nothing. We need you and you can't even protect us." These words are filled with anger and frustration, increasing the pressure on the knight. The knight stands in a daze, fear and confusion evident on her face. Her eyes widen, and her expression shows how much those words hurt her. The accumulated stress causes Knight to be unable to stand. She begins to cough up blood, a clear sign of both physical and emotional pain. She drops to her knees and the crowd of people continue to condemn her, throwing words in her face. "Get out! Incompetent! You can't even protect us!" Knight looks completely devastated and defenseless in the face of these attacks. A demonic figure appears on top of the building. It observes the scene and says with a smirk, "This Ling Tian really did it. Without a direct clash, you were able to turn this sword saint into a broken, defeated individual, completely destroying her spirit." The demoness adds with a smile, "I'm really looking forward to meeting this Ling Tian." She has an expression of obvious curiosity and malicious interest on her face. In the darkness of the night, a fortified walled village with a few wooden houses can be seen. The whole village is dimly lit and the surroundings are peaceful. In the foreground, Lin Tian with long hair and a cape can be seen heading towards the village. A goblin stands in front of him, tensely watching his approach. Heavy footsteps can be heard, emphasizing the tense atmosphere. A cry from the darkness. The boss is back. This means that an important figure has reappeared, inspiring fear and respect in those who have been waiting for him. The dark leader approaches his subordinates and asks a goblin named Gobdi, "How did you do with the task I entrusted you with? Were there any complications?" Gobdi, lowering his head in respect, replies that the raid on the city was a success and they returned with many trophies and captives. There are 2 captives sitting in a cage. The goblin points at them with a smirk and says that some of the captives even surrendered voluntarily to save their lives. The girls look scared and are pressed against each other. Gobdi also reports that they sent a cartload of gold to Kyria on the boss's orders and escorted her and her family out of the city. A woman is seen hugging a child while sitting next to a chest filled with gold. You can see that they are frightened, but also relieved. The figure of the boss is shown with emphasis on his feet. This emphasizes his power and creates an atmosphere of impending menace. Lin Tian praises Gobdi for the work he has done and announces that from now on, he and Gob's Hannah can concentrate on eating magical creatures. Gobdi happily and excitedly replies, "Yes, got it." The leader's inner monologue tells him that Kyria was the only one who believed in him in his past life. Helping her and her family is his way of repaying that support. With a grin on his face, the leader says that in his opinion, this time the holy sword is completely broken. This emphasizes his sense of victory and brutality. Huge dragons circle above the forest, leaving behind them a roar that echoes in the air. The forests and the water beneath them are illuminated by daylight, creating a sense of menace and the presence of a powerful force. In the cave, the dark leader proudly proclaims that all their achievements are due to the help of the Mother of Dragons. Her intervention has clearly been a significant factor in the success of their operations. Lin Tian hears that the saint has fallen and cannot get out of bed, and this gives him great satisfaction. But he emphasizes that it is necessary to ask the Dragon Mother to continue sending dragons to attack Bright City to put pressure on the saint. The Mother of Dragons, tired after her constant raids, asks what reward she should ask for as compensation. Flying back and forth every day exhausts her. The Dark Leader turns to the Mother of Dragons, preparing to show her something important while showing trust and interest. The Mother of Dragons approaches the leader, her claws touching his face. There is clearly some chemistry and tension between them. Smiling, she says, "What I want as a reward is you. How's that for an offer?" Determination and provocation read from her face. Ling Tian looks puzzled and even a little tense as he replies, "You want me? Are you joking?" Her intentions seem unexpected and somewhat embarrassing to him. The Mother of Dragons, leaning over him, says confidently that she won't mind if he makes the Dragon Mother's belly big. This phrase clearly hints at the deeper relationship she is trying to establish. She adds that she would be very upset if he turned her down, and her gaze expresses strong emotion. The Mother of Dragons is ready to fight for her desire, using both seduction and threats. Ling Tian asks with a mocking smile not to take his words the wrong way. He claims that as a weak goblin, he is not worthy of the Mother of Dragons, showing his refusal to accept her offer as a challenge. The Mother of Dragons looks at him, her lips curling into a smile with some hint of amusement and anger. She approaches Ling Tian, saying that he is not an ordinary goblin. In her words, she sounds confident that he has the potential to become a goblin king. These words seem to touch him and cause him to be surprised at the same time. The Mother of Dragons, licking herself and with an expression of pleasure on her face, adds that their ancient dragon race has always honored strength. Weakness is unacceptable to their kind, but strength has always been their value. She continues by explaining that her natural inclination is to only mate with strong beings to create powerful offspring. This hints that the leader has proven his strength since she chose him. Ling Tian is embarrassed, but admits that he can only humbly accept her offer. Their interaction becomes more intense and intimate. The Mother of Dragons looks at him fondly, her face reflecting a deep feeling, albeit in a somewhat somber way. In the shadows, there are observers who look like dragons or other creatures, watching intently. They are clearly surprised or even confused by the actions of the Mother of Dragons. Ling Tian receives a notification that the achievement has been unlocked. His stats have increased significantly. Health, attack, and defense have all received significant increases. He is surprised to notice that he got so many characteristics for free. Soon we see Lin Tian cautiously making his way around the large dragon, careful not to wake it. He admits that he needs to leave while the mother dragon sleeps to avoid possible problems. Next we see Lin Tian riding a red dragon flying over a green area. He realizes how powerful this dragon mother is and realizes that if he is captured again, it could cause him a lot of problems. Shows a mysterious cave entrance surrounded by sharp, threatening rocks, creating a tense and mysterious atmosphere. In this cave was the mother of all dragons, who thinks of the hero, expressing admiration for his potential. She hopes that one day he can lead the goblins and create a new world for them. A few days after returning from Dragon Island, Lamthine faced an important decision. After attacking the City of Light, the goblin tribe had captured many human girls. Lamthine decided to change the approach to preserving the goblin bloodline. He would grant freedom to the elf girls and have humans take on the responsibility of reproduction for the goblins instead. This decision left Kasana utterly shocked, prompting her to confirm with Lamthine if what he said was true. Meanwhile, the elf queen beside him looked far from pleased. Deep down, Lamthine knew that allowing the elves to bear goblin children could potentially produce superior offspring, stronger than humans. However, rather than forcing them, he decided to take a gamble, hoping he could convince the elves to stay willingly and become part of the tribe. The elf queen, already captivated by Lamthine's strength and vision, gently looked at her daughter. "If you and the others want to leave, I won't stop you. As for me, I will stay." Her words took Kasana by complete surprise. But what shocked her even more was when the elf queen stepped forward. Kneeling before Lamthine in a serious tone, she explained that during her time living in the goblin tribe, she had come to see that Lamthine was no ordinary goblin. She requested permission to remain by his side and follow him as a loyal servant. Maintaining his calm demeanor, Lamthine praised the elf queen for her wisdom. Her presence would indeed benefit the tribe, and he promised not to cause trouble for the elves. Lamthine knew that she likely wanted to use his protection to help her people survive in the dangerous demon forest. But he chose not to expose her motives. In fact, this was all part of his plan. The queen's decision threw the elves into confusion, especially Kasana, unable to bear leaving her mother alone. She also knelt before Lamthine, declaring that she would not leave. She was willing to follow her mother and accept Lamthine as her master. The other elves followed suit, pleading with Lin Tion to allow them to remain. A satisfied smile crossed Lamthine's face, though he concealed his sense of victory. As his plan had succeeded, he then declared, "From now on, the elves will no longer be prisoners but members of the goblin tribe. I will ensure your safety." Having defeated the Sword Saint, the goblin tribe temporarily faced no external threats. This was the perfect time to expand the tribe and create new hero-level goblins. However, Lamthine encountered an unexpected issue. The smaller human bodies made it extremely difficult for hero-level goblins to breed naturally. Thinking over this dilemma gave Lamthine a headache. But the elf queen quickly offered a solution. They would assist him in artificial breeding. Reluctantly, Lamthine agreed to her proposal. At that moment, however, he received even more shocking news. A goblin rushed over, reporting that Gobuhan seemed to be dead, urging Lam Tien to go and investigate. This news greatly worried Lam Tien because he had invested many resources in nurturing Gobuhan to become a mutated goblin. Filled with apprehension, Lam Tien immediately went to the scene and found Gobuhan's bloodied body with strange scratch marks all over it. When asked about Gobuhan's condition, the goblins around him could only report that he had suddenly gone mad, clawing at himself until he died. Just then, Gobuhan's body began to undergo a terrifying transformation. Sounds of bones snapping echoed as sharp spikes sprouted from his body, and his fangs grew abnormally large. In the horrified gaze of the goblins, Gobuhan rose and became a grotesque creature. He was a mutated goblin with level 50, with the class of Berserker and titles like Returned from the Dead and Mutated Body. His base stats were formidable with 1200 health, 350 strength, and 400 defense, and he had gained new skills such as bone stimulation, bone blade, and bone growth. Looking at Gobuhan in this new form, Lam Tien felt a chill of worry. He silently thanked his fortunate possession of powerful attributes from his connection with the Dragon Mother. Otherwise, facing Gobuhan in this state would be a tremendous challenge. At this moment, Gobuhan roared and laughed loudly. Realizing that his power had greatly increased, Lam Tien observed calmly and confirmed, "Yes, your intellect and strength have grown significantly." Lam Tien then ordered Gobuhan to focus on helping the tribe produce a new, powerful, and battle-ready generation of goblins. Time passed quickly. 3 months later, the City of Light had fully recovered, and life had gradually returned to the peaceful way it was before the attack. In lively taverns, people laughed and chatted, discussing the goblin tribe's attack. They speculated whether the Sword Saint had overcome the shock, as they thought failing against a group of weak goblins was indeed a great disgrace. Just then, a knight entered the tavern, attracting the gaze of everyone. He found it amusing that a group of supposedly weak goblins needed their heroic team, Snow Protector, to take action. He was the captain of Snow Protector, a diamond-ranked warrior and a renowned count with a famous reputation. Over the past 3 months, the Goblin tribe had also made significant progress. The number of third-generation hero-level goblins had increased to 150 members, greatly strengthening the tribe's power. Through the simulation system, Lamthine received information that the royal family had placed a bounty of 300 gold coins, calling for all heroic teams from around the world to travel to Lighttown to eliminate his goblin tribe. The system warned that this time, the enemies would be extremely strong, including diamond and epic-level warriors, and it required Lam Tien to prepare thoroughly to face the upcoming attacks. Lam Tien had gained an additional 10 system points, and his health attribute had been multiplied tenfold. He could perform the next simulation in a month. Looking at the information before him, Lam Tien also felt concerned. Facing diamond-ranked heroes, who were already among the strongest of humankind, he now had to confront epic-level warriors whose strength surpassed even the Sword Saint. What worried him even more was that this time, the system offered no hints on how to deal with the challenges ahead. The system's ambiguity weighed heavily on him as he considered the uncertain future. At that moment, Lamthine's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of the Elf Queen. She approached him with a serious expression, announcing that there were urgent matters to report. He looked at her with sharp eyes, sternly instructing her to clearly present the situation. The Elf Queen respectfully knelt before him, stating with reverence that the young goblins had basically reached maturity, but the resources and beasts in the surrounding forest were nearly exhausted. The iron ore mines had almost been depleted, leaving their supply of weapons and equipment unable to meet the goblins' needs, directly impacting their training outcomes. Lamthine pondered for a moment, realizing that to sustain their development, they would need a more abundant source of supplies. At the same time, the unrest in the Town of Light was a sign that it was time to change their place of residence. A location with defensible terrain and rich resources was the optimal choice. He stood up and ordered the Elf Queen to inform the entire tribe to prepare for a major migration. Kasana was surprised by this decision, but the Elf Queen remained calm, as if she had anticipated his choice. She nodded and promised to immediately arrange the relocation for the entire goblin tribe. Before long, Lam Tien led the tribe to a majestic mountain, where the rugged, complex terrain made movement difficult but provided a great advantage in defense. They chose a hidden cave behind a waterfall as their new settlement, an ideal location to evade human detection. This place was indeed a perfect haven. Upon arrival, Lam Tien ordered his subordinates to organize patrols, assigning teams to hide and observe the surrounding areas, ready to report any enemy intrusion. He also instructed those staying behind to quickly clear the cave and arrange living spaces for the newborn goblins. Standing before the entire tribe, Lam Tien spoke with a firm voice. "From today, this is our new home. As long as you follow my orders and carry out your duties, I guarantee that everyone will have plenty to eat and will be safe. But remember this well, anyone who breaks the rules I set will face only one outcome: death." All the goblins below cheered, chanting Lamthine's name and swearing absolute loyalty to him at his new residence. If what the system said was true, the first priority was to gather detailed information about the adventurer groups targeting the goblin tribe. Only with enough information could he safely and effectively take the next steps. Meanwhile, in the City of Light, Earl, a well-known nobleman, had just taken a seat when the tavern owner immediately served him a chilled mug of beer. Earl's arrival didn't surprise the owner at all. While wiping a glass in his hand, the owner spoke. "Earl, aren't nobles supposed to deal only with high-level monsters? Why are you here to deal with those goblins?" Earl took a sip of beer and explained that his appearance here was entirely unintentional. He had to come to rescue his useless cousin, who had been captured by those goblins. Being experienced, the tavern owner noticed Earl's explanation didn't seem genuine. In a sarcastic tone, he asked, "Is that really your only reason? A noble like you coming here personally just for a useless cousin?" Before Earl could respond, a voice called out from the tavern entrance. "Hey Earl, you said you'd take care of this, so the reward is yours. Are you expecting me to make this trip for nothing?" The voice drew everyone's attention. Earl turned to look at the door, his expression showing the hint of annoyance as he saw who it was. At the entrance stood an old man with an angry expression. Judging by his attire, he appeared to be a wizard. The old man continued, "The reward for dealing with those goblins is rightfully mine. If you won't let me join, you'd better pay me 1,000 gold coins right here and now." The old man's appearance shocked the people in the tavern. He was Gru, a gray hat wizard and the leader of the Gray Hat Hero Party. Holding the prestigious diamond rank, Earl smirked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Old man, you got quite the nerve. Why don't you?" Before Earl could finish his sentence, He was interrupted by a burst of laughter from a man sitting in the corner of the tavern. Ha ha ha, how ridiculous do you fools think that with the Sword Saint's decline this is your chance to shine. Don't forget the cold-blooded woman will be coming this time too. Legendary adventurer Lucy. The information from the man made the people in the tavern tense. They knew she was incredibly dangerous. Rumor had it she only cared about money and would wipe out anyone, good or bad, without hesitation. Someone in the crowd whispered nervously, "Shut up. Talking about someone like her could cost us our lives." Earl didn't care about Lucas' involvement. After taking another sip of beer, he looked at the man and asked, "You're a wandering warrior. Are you here because of the goblins?" The man in black snorted, "I have no interest in that. I'm here because I'm in the mood to hunt a dragon for fun. If I can kill that dragon, I'll become a legendary adventurer." He then added with a sharp tone, "Let me remind you of one thing, don't underestimate those goblins. Even if they're low-level creatures, their ability to evolve is terrifying, especially the mutated ones." His words made everyone around him feel uneasy. Even Gru, with nearly a century of experience, couldn't deny the truth. "He's right," Gru admitted, "I've lived almost 100 years. And the number of goblins I've encountered is greater than the number of women the rest of you here have ever laid eyes on. Those goblins are wretched creatures that have existed since ancient times. They've always been the common enemy of all races. Despite countless efforts to exterminate them over tens of thousands of years, they've never been wiped out." With that, Gru broke the silence with a laugh. "Ha ha ha, wiping out goblins is such a hassle. If it weren't for the reward, I wouldn't even think of getting involved in this mess." He finished speaking and took another swig of his drink. Gru's words made Earl uneasy. He knew they were right. After all, even the Sword Saint and her powerful knights had suffered defeat at the hands of these goblins. This meant he had to be extra cautious. To minimize the danger, Earl quickly made a decision. He proposed working together with Gru to eliminate the goblins, offering Gru the entirety of the reward upon success. Gru was surprised by such a generous offer but gladly accepted. He secretly thought to himself that if things got dangerous, he could let the Snow Trumpet Party handle it, sparing him any significant effort. Afterward, they took out a map and began discussing their strategy. Gru suggested taking a small group into the forest to avoid drawing too much attention. Once they found the goblins, they deal with them violently and efficiently. Earl, however, disagreed, since there were still many unknowns about these goblins. He insisted they first investigate certain locations and then formulate a detailed plan. Gru felt irritated by the young man's overly cautious nature. He decided to hand over all the planning responsibilities to Earl, unwilling to deal with the hassle. Earl was annoyed by Gru's attitude but remained patient, as he had his own plans in mind. At that moment, a man clad in full iron armor approached. His appearance immediately caught the attention of everyone in the tavern, who stared in confusion, wondering who he was, though the others didn't know. Gru recognized the man immediately and was surprised to see Goblin Slayer himself in this place. Gru suggested they have a conversation. The appearance of Goblin Slayer also shocked Earl. He was familiar with the reputation of this man from the world of anime but had never seen him in person before. Realizing the potential value of such a capable ally, Earl quickly approached Goblin Slayer with a humble attitude. "My apologies for not recognizing you." However, Goblin Slayer said he had no intention of drawing anyone's attention. He then asked Earl directly why he had stopped him. Earl froze for a moment, not because of the question but because he was surprised by Goblin Slayer's voice. It sounded oddly unusual. Earl couldn't help but think the man was eccentric, claiming he didn't want attention while wearing such a distinctive outfit. Seeing Earl's hesitation, Gru broke the awkward silence with a cheerful tone. "Ha ha, is this the same man who slaughtered a goblin leader? I heard in that battle you killed 1,000 goblins by yourself." This information shocked Earl. He doubted whether it could be true. After all, 1,000 goblins was an overwhelming number. Ignoring Earl's reaction, Gru proposed working together with Goblin Slayer to eliminate the goblins in the area. However, Goblin Slayer immediately declined, repeating his familiar mantra, "I don't work with people who slow me down." After saying this, Goblin Slayer shoved Earl aside and continued walking, his actions leaving Earl fuming with anger. Gru was equally irritated. "No need to boast so much. Let's see how you beg for help when those goblins capture you." Gru left, clearly annoyed. He urged Earl to stop dawdling and act quickly to gain the upper hand, insisting they couldn't let the credit for this mission be stolen by someone else. Gru's demand frustrated Earl, who didn't want to rush without proper preparation. But to someone as arrogant as Gru, preparation was simply a waste of time. Meanwhile, Lamthine had arrived outside the City of Light. From a distance, he began observing the people entering and leaving the city. Soon, his attention was drawn to Goblin Slayer, whose distinctive armor made him stand out. Lamthian activated his appraisal skill on Goblin Slayer, and the information quickly appeared. Name Goblin Slayer, level 65, race human, profession none, titles Goblin Hunter. Handsome 1, tyrant, cold-hearted and ruthless 1, who should not exist, HP 900 strength, 260 defense, 450 skills, powerful strike, blood of the father, equipment, rusty iron armor, rusty iron sword, overall combat power 1000 to 3000. Reading the details, Lam Tien was stunned. What caught his attention the most was Goblin Slayer's combat power. Instead of being a fixed number, it was a range 1000 to 3000. This was the first time he had seen such an anomaly. Lam Tien asked his system if something was wrong, but the system replied, "Apologies, master, there is no issue." Lam Tien didn't have time to dwell on it. Just then, a group of knights exited the city gates. He quickly used his appraisal skill on them as well. Lam Tien's focus landed on Earl first. Earl was a professional knight skilled at suppressing monsters with an overall combat power of 1300. Next was Gru, a professional mage with numerous skills and an overall combat power of 1400. Lamthine noted that Gru seemed like a difficult opponent to handle. After assessing the group, Lamthine concluded that only 2 of them were at the diamond rank. However, judging by their demeanor, they didn't seem particularly bright, so he dismissed them as a significant threat, paying special attention to the Goblin Slayer, rumored to be the Goblin's nemesis. Before long, Earl led his men deep into the demon forest. Despite their thorough search, they found no trace of the Goblin tribe. Gru found this incredibly strange. A Goblin tribe of that size shouldn't be able to hide so perfectly. He'd encountered numerous signs of combat and Goblin foraging activities on the way, proving the tribe had to be nearby. As Gru pondered this, Earl called out to everyone, signaling that he had discovered something. He handed Gru a strand of golden hair and asked him what it was. After a careful sniff, Gru identified it as elf hair. This surprised Earl, who firmly believed there was no way the elf tribe would help goblins conceal themselves. Gru, however, argued that it was entirely possible the elf tribe had assisted the goblins in moving and hiding. He pointed out that their thorough search of the forest revealed no viable locations for the goblins to hide. While speaking, he took out a small jar containing a blue butterfly. Gru explained that this species of butterfly was particularly attracted to the scent of elves. He let the butterfly smell the scent from the hair, believing it would lead them to the dwelling of the elves and goblins. After a while, the butterfly landed by a riverbank, circled a few times, and then returned to its jar. Gru concluded that the butterfly had lost the scent, meaning the elves must have crossed the river. Sensing danger, Earl suggested waiting for the Goblin Slayer. They just need to act before he does. Confident in his strength, Gru dismissed the idea as unnecessary. With a smug grin, he pointed across the river. On the opposite bank, a goblin with glowing red eyes stood glaring at the intruders. The appearance of the goblin excited the whole team. They charged across the river, hoping to scare the goblin into fleeing back to its tribe, thus revealing the location of the tribe. Unbeknownst to them, every move they made was part of Lamthine's meticulous plan. Standing atop a rocky ledge, Lamthine watched with a satisfied smile as his prey took the bait. As he surveyed the surroundings, Lamthine's expression suddenly shifted to one of agitation. He had spotted the Goblin Slayer nearby. A hint of unease crept into Lamthine's thoughts. His priority was dealing with Gru and Earl first, but the unexpected presence of the Goblin Slayer posed a latent threat that he could not ignore. After observing for a while, Lamthine was stunned to discover that the legendary Goblin Slayer was a strikingly beautiful woman. She was happily enjoying the cool water after completely removing her armor. After intently observing her stunning curves, Lamthine realized she wasn't entirely human, yet possessed extraordinary strength. The fact that she could leisurely bathe in such a situation proved that she was far from ordinary. For the first time since becoming a goblin, Lam Tien felt an unnatural discomfort. It was as though this alluring woman was deliberately trying to lure him down there. This raised his suspicions. Perhaps she had already detected his presence. Recognizing the woman's cunning nature and seeing her as a potential danger, Lam Tien decided to retreat. He quietly left his vantage point and resolved to focus on dealing with Gru and Earl first. As Lam Tien suspected, the woman had indeed noticed his presence. Watching him leave, she wondered what kind of intelligent creature he could be. Her lips curled into a sly smile, followed by a chilling gesture of licking her lips, as if savoring a delicious morsel simply through sight. Back with Gru's group, After a short chase, the goblin fell. Observing their surroundings, Earl ordered everyone to regroup. The goblin tribe was likely nearby. Before they could properly reform, a volley of sharp arrows rained down upon them. Realizing they'd fallen into a trap, Gru ordered his men to focus and remain vigilant. Simultaneously, he unleashed a massive fireball towards the incoming arrows, completely incinerating them and saving them from danger. Earl was thrilled by the display of power. He praised Gru, saying, "You're as strong as ever. Without you, we would have fallen for the goblin's trap." Gru, experienced in combat, cautioned Earl to remain focused. The battle was far from over. At that moment, a terrifying roar erupted from behind their formation. The sound startled everyone. They turned to see a huge goblin emerging from its hiding place. What chilled them to the bone was its grotesque form. The goblin had 4 arms, each wielding a different weapon, and it was charging at incredible speed. Gru instantly recognized it as a hero-class goblin. Earl and the others were momentarily stunned by Gru's warning. Hero-class goblins were rare, possessing strength and intelligence far surpassing ordinary goblins. Gru quickly commanded, "Focus all fire. Don't let it get close. You want the next part? Write the secret word in the comments. Slayer." Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put a like, because it speeds up the release of the video. See you later and bye-bye.